All right, thank you for coming. Today is Friday, April 26th, and this is the April meeting of CT State Senate. I am calling the meeting to order at 12:30. Our first order of business is to approve the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda, or is there a motion to accept the agenda as presented?
Motion to accept as presented. John Furell.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Thank you. Any opposed? We have a consent agenda. Thank you, folks. Moving on to approving the minutes from the special March meeting. Those minutes are in our SharePoint folder. Are there any changes to the minutes for the special March meeting?
I was going to move to accept the minutes of the March special meeting.
Thank you, Roberta. Is there a second?
I'll second. Peter Bennett.
Second.
Oh, I need a name. Who was the second? Peter. There we go. Peter Bennett. All those in, any opposed? Any opposed? Very good. The minutes from the March special meeting have been approved. Moving on to the March meeting of Senate. Any changes? Any changes? The March meeting.
I do have one change, L. I need to add Senator Norley to it. So I will have to make a revision to that.
You'll make that revision? Okay,
Yes.
thank you, Brian.
All right,
With
thank
the
you, Brian.
anticipated edit, are there any other changes? Is there a motion to accept the minutes as amended?
So moved.
Thank you, Roberta. Is there a second?
Second by John Furell.
Thank you, John. Any objections? Any objections? All right, folks, and we have passed the minutes for the March meeting. So I work pretty hard at being positive for our opening remarks because it sets a tone for the rest of the meeting. But as I have received comments from folks in response to our Senate communications, it is getting really hard to remember that we are CT State, that we are one college. The concerns about finite numbers of students, and it feels like it is higher ed Hunger Games at CT State right now. We are competing with one another instead of collaborating. Our programs at each of the campuses are in a perpetual process for trying to sway students into individual programs. And we're also at a point where we're suffering from report fatigue. The consultants are coming in, they're identifying the problems that we already know about. It's not like there's new information that's being provided. And yet we don't see evidence of how those problems are going to be solved. And I'm hoping that CT State and CSCU will begin to authentically engage with shared governance, to not try to solve the problems when Senate isn't meeting, to continue to re-engage with us. I haven't attended a leadership council meeting since the first week of February, and I really feel disconnected from having a sense of what is happening with administration and with leadership. And this has been a critical part of our relationship during fall. And now we're at a point where things just feel really hard and we're missing an important communication piece. That was also made clear in trying to communicate with campus shared governance leaders. specifically related to the elections. We had campus folks doing their best work trying to figure out what needed to happen, but we were missing important information to share with them in order for them to know what to do. And so I have identified a major gap between knowing what the leadership structures are, the shared governance structures are, who the leaders are and their responsibilities, but also having mechanisms in place to really have meaningful dialogue with them about what we do and what they do, and how those are sometimes opportunities to build upon one another, and sometimes they are mutually exclusive. So as we are looking to wind down this really first year, admittedly it is 1.5 semesters, we are also called upon to make suggestions for how we do better. And one of the things that I would like to see happen is a shared governance summit, where not meetings, but a summit where we are listening and working with shared governance leaders from the campuses to find out what's happening at their campus. How effective is their shared governance? How can we help them, and how can they help us? And unfortunately, I've asked for this several times and I'm not getting any responses at all. And it's really getting frustrating to be working towards a better CT state, a more collaborative CT state, and a more functional CT state, but not feeling like the partners are really there in administration to do that work with us. So I am asking all of you, whether you are a senator, whether you are at a campus, or whether you are on this call because you are interested in shared governance, to help us find a path forward. Last month during our meeting, a senator conveyed a sentiment that they understood that some of the smaller campuses were being displaced by the larger campuses. And it turned out that wasn't the characterization of the conversation that had happened at the campus. And yet it stuck with me. Like, there is something happening there that is disconcerting. And those things are actually that higher ed Hunger Games, that finite resources, those finite number of students where we are really competing with one another instead of working with one another to solve the problems. And that's what I am asking for help with from all of you so that we can solve these problems. CT State can't do it by itself. CSCU hasn't done it. And I think that really puts the onus upon us to continue to weigh in and remain a part of meaningful shared governance. I will take, I see I have a couple of minutes left. Questions, comments, thoughts, concerns, folks?
Yeah, I'd like to make a point if I may.
Yes, sir.
I think that the larger campuses play a factor at the expense of the smaller ones when we have college-wide elections. It's obvious that somebody running from a larger campus may get more votes to the office simply because the college happens to have more employees. And obviously somebody running from a smaller campus might have less chances to get elected because that college has less employees. So I think for future references, for future projects, future works, something should be done about this. Because obviously faculty or staffers running for office from smaller campuses may really be fighting against odds. Like there's no chance they can actually be voted in if they're coming from a smaller place. So that's something, some regulations might be established, maybe based on percentage rather than number of votes, to make the play field fair for everybody. That's what I'd like to share.
Thank you, Angelo. And the point that you're raising is specifically related to Curriculum Congress, right? Because the campuses elected senators, but I take your point and I understand the issue. And I have captured that, just so you're aware, I have captured that as something that we need to work on when we do the assessment this fall.
Thank you.
All right. Folks, I just want to make you aware, I see things popping up in my chat as well as my personal text messages. I am at ACC today and I don't have a great coverage and I'm working on 2 different screens. I am not able to monitor either of those things. So just please be aware that the only thing that I can keep track of is this meeting right now. And if it's urgent, please reach out to somebody else. So with that, I am going to surrender my time to keep us on track. And President Maduco, are you with us? There you are. Yes, sir. Nicola, do you have the slide ready to present the election results? Maybe we can do that while President Maduco is troubleshooting his sound issue.
Yes, let me just get that up. Take 2 seconds. Can I share my screen?
You should be able to. Yes, ma'am.
Can everyone see the screen? Okay, so what you are looking at is the campus election results from this month. As you can see, pretty much all of the positions have been filled. There is, when you look at Manchester, there is 1 outstanding position that is the elected at large. That election is to wrap up or begin next weekend and wrap up by next week. And then Capital has an asterisk because I have not had the opportunity to change that yet. The elections committee did not receive the election results from what is on our spreadsheet as the local governance leader. But I did receive word that the person that communicated the results was part of the elections committee at Capitol. So not officially official, but pretty official at this point in time. I'm just waiting to hear back from the local governance representative from Capitol. And then you can see at the bottom, there is the non-campus affiliated Joseph Cullen and Michael Panicello from New Britain elected to those positions. So you can see with the names, there are a number of elected current serving senators that will be serving another set of terms with some new people to join us.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
President Maduco, have you solved the sound problem?
I think he's off the call right now.
Okay, thank you, Alan. Well, Charlene, in the interest of time.
No, he's there.
Oh, he is.
Okay, I'm here. I'm alive
Sorry about
again.
that.
There we go. All right.
Thank you for your patience. Happy Friday, everyone. Let me share my screen 1 second. Okay, I'm just gonna speak. So for starters, good afternoon, everyone. Happy Friday. I wanted to speak to first the bomb threat that took place last Saturday at our CT State Esnanta campus. So for starters, we had the campus the campus hosted a wonderful Pride event. I believe it was drag story time, and something that I know initially there was pushback and backlash from the local community. And to the credit of our colleagues at Esnuntuck, like they're like, nope, we're standing by our community members and by our our neighbors, our friends, or family members in the LGBTQ community as it pertains to that. So we agreed to host it at Esnuntuck, and then through the due diligence of our police chief, Christopher Shute, he heard some concerning messages. There was a potential bomb threat. So himself and Captain Manny, they secured additional security, and I believe more sworn officers to be there on site, not only to support the event, but also just make sure that there were protesters and supporters that were on the outside, that nothing nefarious was taking place. And then the NBC affiliate in NYC, they got an email claiming a bomb threat for Esnuntuck. And though we didn't receive that until a couple hours later, Chief Shute was proactive and partnered with the Connecticut State Police to do a sweep of the campus, found nothing. And then upon receiving that notification from the NBC affiliate in NYC, we reached back out to the state police. They were busy because Saturday is just a crazy day. So we resorted to partnering with the Hartford Police Department and their bomb squad, and they came to campus to do a sweep. And that was all clear. And then Chief Shute and his team remained on campus throughout the day just to ensure that nothing else concerning or threatening was taking place. So definitely scary, right? I think just watching the news, we know there's a lot going on, and it was paramount that not only the safety of our employees and our students, but also our visitors that frequent our campuses feel safe. And it's not just for Esnuntuck, but it's really statewide. So I really want to commend not only Chief Shute and his team and our partners at both the state police and the Hartford Police Department, but also just the entire CT State Esnuntuck community for their advocacy, for diverse lifestyles and people throughout our communities, and really standing tall and firm in the face of some public opposition. Though I believe the event was beautiful. I believe there was rave reviews from the parents of the children who were sitting through the story time. So I want to stop right there. There's a lot of information. I know, and I heard concerns from other campuses. I want to kind of stop right there and answer any questions specific to the threats of last weekend and really just overall police and public safety.
President Maduco, can you say a little bit about why a bomb threat wasn't named in communications? So folks at Esnuntuck and students at Esnuntuck, I've had students who have left my classroom. They're not coming back this semester.
Yeah.
They feel like information is not being, the information is not being shared candidly or completely.
Yeah.
And they have lost trust in us.
Mm-hmm. So was the college-wide message different than the message that was sent to the campus? In terms
It doesn't explicitly say that there were bomb threats.
Well, I think from a law enforcement and public safety, the threats weren't deemed credible, right? Because of just the anonymous email or whatever. So there was not a quote unquote bomb, and law enforcement, including Chief Shute, felt like it wasn't credible. So I think through a law enforcement peace officer standpoint, I think they're just being careful with the language that's being used. Even the message that I sent out to both the campus and also college-wide, I didn't include the drag story hour, right? Because I did not want to conflate or blame or cast any aspersions on a great event tied to threats that were deemed not credible, right? And if there's a mistake in how that was delivered, I'll own it. But there was just a lot going on, right? And a lot of just conflicting messaging from the outside. But, it's definitely something that we want to learn about. But what I'm confident is that we had sworn officers, we had multiple law enforcement agencies on site, all day, not only doing the sweeps, but just visible and present to ensure and deter any potential threats. Senator Sullivan, I saw your hand up. If you want to speak to that, go ahead.
Bonnie, go ahead.
I have to agree that there was a lot of concern, especially at the late delivery of that announcement to campus. But not only that on Monday, there was really no communication in regards to how better support our campus staff and faculty that were present
Yeah.
during that event. And really, there was no communication in any aspect of the threat that was currently occurring for that event. Some of us were there from 9 o'clock in the morning until 2 in the afternoon, and we were not made aware or given a choice whether to remain on campus or not.
Yeah.
I think that's number one concerning. Number two, the faculty and staff and students that came back on Monday, or if they chose to be there on Monday,
Yeah.
because there was a huge population that chose not to return, but there is still triggers. That event has now triggered several of our vets and other faculty and staff that are very fearful of returning to campus.
Yeah.
And that was not addressed or provided support for our community members to feel safe to return due to the lack of communication that was brought back to campus.
Okay.
So I think we really need to learn from this, and how can we support both ends, even though we're not thinking or trying to pin the finger on one particular event. But as a DEI person who was there supporting honestly, when I read that email at 8 o'clock at night, that was very worrisome to myself.
Yeah. Yeah. Now
The
again,
host, President Maduka, the host of the event. So I want to give credit to Erica Chair-Smalling, because she's the individual who advocated for this event. She not single-handedly, but it was primarily her work that
Yeah.
brought this to Esnuntuck. And she didn't learn of what was happening until after she went home that night and read it in your email.
yeah.
And we need to do a better job of communicating to people in real time.
Yeah.
Even if it is determined not to be a real threat,
Yeah.
the folks who are on the campus should be part of those conversations.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I may add one more thing. Erica and I worked collaboratively on this particular event, but it was only seen, or we weren't brought into very key conversations to support each other in ensuring that this event went off as well as it did, even with the underlying issues that were brought up. And that division to make one person go through what she went through without the needed resources and supports, so this event to truly be supported, not just by cheek, but also in mouth and in action, was extremely evident that it was not present. And we need to change that.
Okay. So Kent, so a couple things. I think in terms of the support, let's circle back specific to CT State Esnuntuck and figure out a way to meet and communicate with the campus community, right? And one, make sure that we hear and identify and list all of the concerns specific to last weekend's events, and questions too, in terms of, okay, where do we go from here? I think that's important. I think too, in terms of the specific concerns about just the support for the overall event, I want to learn more, right? In terms of just what was not received or provided or communicated, and then 3, going back to the day up, like, I can't speak to it. I know that Chief Shute and his team were doing their best, right? Because it was moving targets. Even when we received information, it was delayed, right? It was delayed in terms of what we even got back from the NBC affiliate, that they got it, and there wasn't the immediate, let's figure out a way to get this information to the folks here in time, right? So that's definitely something that we can debrief, right? And kind of break it down and figure out the breakdowns of communication, but also too, what needs to be done to ensure that the campus community feels supported, and what were things that simply didn't happen, right? So again, I don't want any of our folks, one, to work or live in fear, right? But 2, those who were triggered, how do we create wraparound support for them? And then 3, moving forward, use this as an example, have it be it's fire, have it be it's bomb or whatever. What is the most suitable way to communicate with the campus community? And maybe the best practices that are developed for Esnuntuck can be something that we kind of spread and share across the state.
Thank you, President Maduka.
Yeah. I can stop. I know I heard the buzzer, so I can
You,
just
you did.
email.
Time's up and we are
Yeah.
staying on track today.
Yeah, it's okay. Godspeed.
All right, so we're going to move on. We've already taken care of elections. We're going to move on to,
I'm sorry, but I wanted I didn't realize that the whole time was going to be spent on that one topic. I did have a comment for
very quickly, Seth.
Okay, thank you. So, I wanted to comment on the complaint filed against you by and brought students to your inauguration, and then subsequently filed a complaint against you, alleging intimidation and improper behavior on your part, and then I know before the article that came out in the Current, you sent out I guess what at best can be considered a cryptic communication, espousing your commitment to transparency, equity, and inclusion. So I think for our Senate, I think it's important that, and I know others are also calling for an independent investigation of the matter. And I think from our Senate, I think we should also support an independent investigation. Given the report last month from Lori Lamb, which I think accurately described CSU HR as, deeply flawed, it would be, I don't know that there's trust, frankly, that CSU will be capable of correctly investigating the matter. So I would at least put that out. And I know I've heard that concern from individuals on my campus at Capitol. So, just a comment that, we want to make sure this matter is investigated properly. And I would say that was another communication that, was really not transparent. And that was another probably problematic communication as well. So just wanted to provide that comment. And I don't know if any others had any other thoughts about that as well.
So folks, Sarah Siglio, I see your hand, Roberta. Please keep in mind, folks, we're looking at better than a 4-hour meeting today. And we will be calling on folks just one time. Bonnie, you've already spoken to President Meduco's remarks, so I'm not going to call on you. But Sarah, you have your hands up.
Yes, it was realized, I think last Friday, that the charter allows for part-timers. Are we addressing this
Sarah,
later in the meeting?
Sarah, that issue is going to be addressed later in the meeting.
Great. I thought this was the time for it. Thank you.
No. Okay. All right. Very good. Thank you. All right, folks, we're going to move on to CT State marketing.
But Professor Vandenberg, let me address Professor Freeman. So the message that I said on Friday, because there's a matter involving a student, actually not even a student, really just a complainant, I'm being careful, one, not to out the complainant and use their name, right? And use any type of identifiable information. That goes for any potential investigation from Title IX to an incident or whatever. So I was being very careful with really making more so that, hey, there's a concern, and my office included is not above what is required when any type of complaints are coming forward. And I believe I made that clear. I think too, I'm not going to speak to the matter because again, I don't want it to be perceived or assumed that somehow I'm interfering or implying anything in any way to uphold the processes that will take place. And then 3, my office nor CT State is looking into this matter because of my role. And obviously this is something that CSU system office is looking into. And what I can request from the CSU system is to ensure that some type of statement is provided to say this is where we are now. And that's as much as I can say. And again, it's not to be flippant or cryptic or non-transparent, but it's also too, when there is a situation that's going to be looked into, it's very important, especially from the standpoint of administration, not to interfere or to somehow compromise the objectivity of what needs to take place.
Thank you, President Meduco. All right, shifting gears. Charlene, I have been trying to pull you into this for a while now. So folks, I would like to introduce Charlene Tappan. She is Charlene, the director of CT State Marketing, is that correct?
I am the Senior Director of Strategic Marketing.
Okay, so I asked you to join today to talk a little bit about who is CT State Marketing, what are you doing? And then we'd specifically like to hear about enrollment campaigns to increase that finite number of students, both for summer and fall. And then hopefully there will be an opportunity for you to hear from senators for their thoughts and ideas.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm going to share my screen.
Okay.
Okay. I apologize. I don't use WebEx. I am hoping it is easy as everything else that we use.
Can you click
Okay.
into
Looks like from
presentation
my
mode?
end that you can see what we're doing.
We can. Can you click into presentation mode so we can see your slides a little better?
Okay, I apologize. When I pulled this up, it clicked off my speaker. So Elle, what did you just say?
Can you click into presentation mode? So that
I am on my screen. Oh man, I hate this.
where are our IT experts? Seth? Any suggestions here?
She can hit the beginning, because unless you have another screen, you will have to move your screen over. Otherwise, if you just click from the beginning, the button on the top left-hand corner, thank you, and that will begin. So you have a secondary screen, so you need to shift screens.
Function key F5 also.
Thank you.
Thank you. Again, it's.
You know what, Charlene, this is fine. Folks can zoom in later.
I do want to get into the right screen.
Under the monitors thing on the tab at the top, you can change from automatic and change which monitor that you plan to present on.
I only have one monitor.
So go to the monitors in the very middle of the ribbon on the top.
This is embarrassing. I'm so sorry.
You know, I have really bad vision and I can see this perfectly fine. So
just go ahead. We're okay.
Okay.
We made a gallant effort. We're gonna just continue.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. Okay, so hi, you've met me, and now you know that this is a challenge. Everybody knows it's a challenge. So just briefly, just going to talk about, who we are, what our strategies are, what our tactics are, and leave time for you for questions. Elle, just so you know, in this view, I no longer have access to the timer, so keep me honest.
I will keep you in line.
Great, thank you. So who we are, our marketing department, there are 17 of us. We are the legacy of the marketing departments from the 12 campuses. We are geographically dispersed. We are on 10 different campuses. We have 3 main functional areas. They're creative services, digital marketing, which is our website and our social media presence. We have media and public relations, and that area encompasses not just what you would consider traditional public relations, but that's also where our media buying comes from. Because we're in sort of a temporary setup. So organizational communications, Alexa, who puts out the newsletters and does the webinars and all the announcements, she's currently reporting to me. And we work very closely with the Center for New Media in Middlesex and with publication services at Gateway. And the other point I would like to make, and sometimes this gets lost in everything that we're doing, is we see ourselves as revenue generators. We're not just a cost center where money's being sunk into this big black hole. We really pride ourselves on being able to prove that we contribute to revenue via our enrollment. briefly, and I will have this to Elle so she can send it out to everyone if that's your normal practice. But just so you see, as you mentioned, I'm the Senior Director of Strategic Marketing. We have a creative services unit, which has 7 people in it. 6 are graphic designers, and then Megan, who's really our creative director. Vivian, who oversees digital marketing. So she's got a web team and got a social media team. Melissa Lamar is out on her own here in media buying and public relations. And then, as I mentioned, Alexa is supporting us as well through organizational communications. Just so you know, there's a couple hashtag positions here. They were originally envisioned for the department, but were not filled due to budgetary reasons. And also what's not on here is the plan had been that there would be a PR and communications person on each campus or shared between 2 campuses. And in most cases or many cases that did not happen also because of budgets. So we're working around, sort of what the vision was and then what the actuality is. And one other piece that I don't put this out. Somebody accused me of sounding defensive about it and I don't mean to. So I'm going to just get that out of the way. We came together as a structured, layered department on October 20th of last year. So some of the work that we're doing, in addition to supporting everyone, is just trying to get what a department looks like. So that takes a little time. Just want to share with you briefly, again, we'll send the deck out, work that we had done as a department last year was just, identifying, what our mission was, what our vision was, and what our values were. And just making sure that we check in on these as we're doing our work, as we're figuring out our guidelines and processes and procedures, and as we're working particularly with our campuses to make sure that we're reflecting these as we move forward. Okay. Briefly, what are our goals? We want to deliver cost-effective strategic marketing. We want to drive prospects to our websites, or we want to drive them to our campuses. We want to convert those prospects to applicants, and we want to encourage our students to continue. So we want to set the ball, and then working with our colleagues in the college office function, as well as our campuses, have them spike it over the net. That is the only sports metaphor you will ever get out of me. So we were asked to, what we're doing, how we're doing it. So just so you know, this is our media mix for the year that we are currently in. We are using social media, paid and unpaid. We are using online video, mostly on YouTube. We're using digital ads, we geofence, we look at the ages of people, where they reside, keywords that they may put in to make sure that when someone's out there looking for us, that they find us. We're using streaming TV spots, we're using cable television, we're optimizing our searches through Google. We're doing radio, streaming and broadcast, and we're doing billboard. And this is the time where I would mention that, and you've probably heard this from a marketer before, but many of you are not in our primary target market. So a lot of what we're doing, you may not be seeing. Hopefully you'll catch a billboard once in a while. You may see something on social media, but if we're doing our jobs right, if you in where you are in your life or your family, is in our demographic, hopefully you are seeing. We're doing our best to make sure you're seeing our ads. If you're out of that, you might not see it, but please know that you can always ask us, specifics of what's going on. Just briefly, I wanted to touch on and just sort of social media stats, because we get asked about that a lot. Most of the people following us on social media are women, and even though it's often said it's for an older crowd, we still do have a pretty significant touch on Facebook. And we're looking to grow this all the time. We're also doing more on LinkedIn. Instagram and Facebook are linked, so we are trying to get those messages out Across the board, most people, especially in higher ed, are mentioning that their engagement is not what it used to be. We are experiencing that as well, but we are taking steps to try to up that. Okay. So here's some of the tactics to support those goals. We do paid and unpaid things. Mostly social, you'll see, paid ads, and they're accompanied by not only our sort of, announcements, general feel-good stories, this is who we are, but, events that we're having or events that have taken place and following up on that. And we are piggybacking where we can on things that are done on local social media. We work very closely with the functional areas. We are meeting with them all the time, and also working very closely with our campuses. Despite the fact that we're 10 months in, we are still trying to transform from 12 colleges to 1 college. And one of the questions that we ask all the time when someone connects with us is this work extensible to all locations? We do not want to do 12 times whatever. We really would like to work with our partners across the college to say, okay, well, if you're doing X, can we do that for the other 11? And everybody would have access to that best thinking. So we ask that question a lot. And we also want to make sure that we're authentic. It's very easy for marketing to say X when we're really doing Y. So we ask a lot of questions. We want to make sure that we are presenting ourselves in a truthful way and that we're not painting a picture of CT State that is not the experience that our students will have. So we're just very cautious about that. So that's a little bit about sort of who we are and what we do. You asked specifically about summer and fall. So for summer, and this campaign's running through May 31st, we've got, billboards across the state. We're on radio and the top stations. We're doing digital advertising. We're doing paid and unpaid social media, and we're doing, I have news releases across the state. Saying that makes me realize I skipped a slide. Our philosophy, we would like it to be digital only, but our philosophy is definitely digital first. We know from research done across the country, we know from anecdotes from our campuses that most of our people are, when investigating something to make a decision, they are on a mobile device. They have multiple devices. They are on smartphones, 5+ hours a day. And they are engaging with us in a way that's measurable. So that's where we want to be. Now, yeah, we're doing billboards, but we have a very clear vision of sort of what are the best ways to most directly reach our prospective students and their influencers, and we're making sure that that's where we are. And then when it comes to measuring the effectiveness of what we're doing, again, digital is where we want to be. So.
Hey, Charlene, you've got just over a minute left.
Oh, dear God. Okay. Yeah, I'm not good. Okay. Additional campaigns quickly. We've got stuff out there for open house, community college month, nursing week, enroll in a day. We're using those billboards that we've done to leverage. We've leveraged them to get to those places. And then for fall, it'll be the same or similar tactics with a strong social media outreach. That's where we're starting. We will do a dropout, stop out campaign. We've done that for the last several semesters. We're in the final stages of partnering with an ad agency to help increase our reach and conversion. Obviously, accelerated classes, we'll keep doing those. We won't forget those during the semester, but understanding that all of this work is budget dependent. Questions in the last 4 seconds?
You've got 28.
Okay.
So Sarah Perez.
So just a quick question regarding program marketing. So I work with the human services program coordinators from across the state, and something that, we're trying to grow a program, we're trying to create materials on our own to promote events, but how can we get support as programs across the state through marketing? or is that an option?
Oh, no, it's absolutely an option. What we wanted to do is program sheets, the program campus, that those programs are coming together across the state. We have examples we can show you. It's not for you to lay out. We can just give you content and that can be or
I have to mute you. You have feedback happening and you're actually canceling out Charlene. So that's why I'm muting you. There you go, Charlene. Sorry about that.
Thank you. So as Sarah was just saying, and Sarah, you can give me a call. We can talk this through, or anybody on the campus who's involved as a program coordinator or department chair. The expectation is just that we are presenting a single document, a single brochure, a single one pager that recognizes the locations of all of our programs, the contacts for those programs, and shared information. If it is a unique program, it's only on one campus, we will certainly address that and be able to provide it. You haven't seen selective admissions sheets. That's the model that we're doing for the other programs. And it's just a single sheet of paper with aggregated information about the different program locations.
Thank you, Charlene. Next up is Roberta.
Thank you so much, Charlene, for your presentation. We appreciate it. You talked about Enroll in a Day, content and marketing and information that you put out, and it's really great. However, different campuses have different needs for Enroll in a Day, and so sometimes the information that is put out there about how to sign up for Enroll in a Day and like that sort of thing, is there a way that we can be that there can be some flexibility to allow campuses to have a little bit more leeway as to like how they're going to promote specific college-wide events for their like respective area? You know what I mean?
I think they do, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And I apologize, I can't even find the button. Stop sharing. So
that's okay.
I'm a mess. So if you go on the marketing page on CT State, there are templates there that people can use to promote individual events, and you can customize that content to whatever works for your campus. Things like Enroll in a Day, and I want to say definitely Open House, we've done sort of a more, there's a little more content populated in the template, but it's still a template that goes out to the campuses. And again, you can fill in like, we're doing campus tours or we're not doing campus tours. We're doing this, we're doing that. We are trying to work through like the admissions and recruitment activities group, things that we can. And I'll give you an example. If all 12 colleges were having an open house during April, we would be able to say all the campuses of CT State are having an open house during April. And it's a little easier for us to put money behind that.
Right. It's more cost effective.
Yeah. And I'm not, I want to, sort of presume that what makes it easier for marketing, is how everything should be decided. That is certainly not the direction I'm going in, but it's really easier for our students to understand. And it doesn't have to be April, but it could be like during the next 4 weeks. We just ran into like, hey, we're doing FAFSA Fridays, but not at Northwestern.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
So we're looking for ways, again, that 12C to 1C, and is it extensible to all 12? That's what we're trying to kind of tease out of places. It's 12 unique campuses with their own cultures and their own traditions, and their own way of doing things. But we're trying to kind of take the step back and say, okay, we're trying to tell everyone it's one college. So how do we do that and still maintain that local flavor? And it's still a challenge, and we're open to input, and we'll work with everyone. There will be a new ticketing system being released this summer that will let you alert us that you want to have a conversation, because we recognize these are all conversations. It's not like.
Charlene, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next person because we only have about 1 minute left. So Peter.
Anybody call me? Thank you.
First of all, thank you very much for the presentation. I just had a question to it. It's like a lot of the marketing I see, we're always saying why it's so great to come to CT State, versus students really telling us why they're doing it. And with the student first approach, and that's, I'm just wondering, we know it's such a big word of mouth population that we're trying to reach. And I'm just wondering if there's some thought being given to having more and more students literally talking about all the value props that we know that are out there in terms of why they should come to CT State, whether that's actually part of the marketing effort moving forward.
Absolutely. That is definitely where we see the next phase of our marketing going. And, again, we're only 10 months in. We didn't really have a lot of students who could talk about the benefits of a CT State education. And that's where that kind of authenticity comes in. Like, okay, well now they've been here and now they're graduating or they've had a year under their belt. So absolutely, that is the direction we're going in. But we also have to still educate people about who we are. And we also still need a strong call to action that we need them to, come to an info session, go to an open house, enroll for classes. So you will see that expanding in the next campaigns that we're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Charlene. Sarah, if you could get ready for yours, you're coming up next. I'm going to give President Meduco just a minute, though. President Meduco, I saw your hand.
Yeah. Thank you, Professor. Charlene, appreciate you. Right, a lot of work. I think this has been helpful for everyone. And Charlene is open to feedback and questions that absolutely will help the marketing team as a whole, right, to kind of refine this. Dr. Pryor, to your question about kind of like the customizations of the campuses, the answer is yes, right? I think there is flexibility. And I think in terms on the ground level, how, in this case, CT State Gateway wants to conduct, hold, organize, and enroll in the day event, that has to be unique and custom to Gateway. I think that's nothing that's ever going to be centrally mandated or controlled, because how could we? And that wouldn't make any sense. I think in terms of Senator Bennett's question, there is current work being done in terms of recording student testimonials. So, soon to be student graduates are being, I want to say that's taking place either this week or next week, I believe. And then there'll be broad kind of publication of that in terms of the benefits of going to CT State. And we want to build upon that. So that's an excellent idea. And that's something a lot of people have been clamoring about, including our students. And it lends to what Charlene has been mentioning, that authenticity in terms of our message. And again, I don't use students first. I believe in students first, but in terms of the original students first moniker and all of that, that doesn't leave my lips, right? Because that's a different regime and different administration. I think we have to kind of circle around what's our theme, what's our goal, what's our vision moving forward.
Charlene, could you stop sharing? Because
somebody can tell me where that is, because I have been clicking around the whole time.
I just messaged you in the chat, Charlene.
Did okay, so I'd have to actually have the chat open. I appreciate that.
There should be a stop button at the very top of your page.
Perhaps in the center of your screen. And Sarah, maybe if you try to share, it will.
I was just going to say, maybe I should try to
Yeah, just overrun me.
There we go.
Okay.
All right, Charlene, thank you very much for coming. If folks have questions, would you mind if I share your email address so that folks can get directly in touch with you?
I do not mind at all. Email, Teams message, call me. I'm a 5 days a week in my office, so please reach out.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
The invitation. Bye all.
Sarah, we are moving on to some more new and exciting bylaws work.
Thank you. I'm excited about being up more towards the top. So this is exciting. We have a chance to talk through some things. Okay, so this was sent out to the group this past week. Some folks have put in comments, so I'll go through those comments when I go to present some of that information. So right now for the minutes, I'd like to make a motion for section 4 under Senator elections, little 2. I'd like to make a motion to accept the language as presented. Outgoing senators shall not participate in May officer elections for the subsequent year.
This is Roberta. I'll second.
Very good. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor, please raise your hands. All those in favor, please raise your hands. John, has the vote stabilized?
Not yet. 26.
26 in favor. Go ahead and lower your hands, folks. All those opposed? All those opposed? Seeing no opposition, any abstentions? One abstention. The motion carries. Sarah, you have another?
All right. So for the minutes, this is going to be under section 4, nominations and elections to Senate. It's letter C, student senators. I make a motion to accept the language written, student senator elections will align with other college-wide student elections.
This is Roberta. I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Miguel?
Is there any, and I don't know the answer to this, but is there a concern about there being different periods for student elections across the 12 campuses? I'm just wondering, is that going to be a problem potentially in terms of the schedule, where a campus might have an elected senator because they do their elections in the spring for the fall, and another campus might not do their elections until late September, and so now they would be missing meetings and things like that. So I'm just wondering that in terms of procedure.
Roberta, you're speaking to this issue?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you.
So early in the fall semester, all of the campus put forward their names for students to be represented on the student advisory committee to the Board of Regents. And in consulting with some of the activities directors, felt that this was a more consistent time to do those elections. So, because it's something they already have to do campus-wide. And then, from those elections, then they would vote to elect the actual student representatives to this body. So trying to make it more succinct for the students across the system, as well as those that have to help facilitate that process.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Angelo.
So just for clarification, we're going to have a student senator per campus or one representing all the campuses?
We have 3 student senators, one from the small, one from the medium, and one from the larger campuses. So one from each of those.
Okay, great, thank you.
Seeing no further questions, I'm going to ask if there are any objections. Are there any objections? Can we pass this as a consent, with consent? Okay, are there any abstentions? Are there any abstentions? Passes with unanimous. Thank you. Sarah.
Okay. This next section is under 4 nominations and elections, and this is letter D, executive officer elections. John posted, posted in the comments, should we relabel this to be executive officer nominations? I would say, just based off of continuity from senator elections, to keep it as executive officer elections. So I'll put the motion forward and then we could have discussion. So I'd like to make a motion to, I don't know if I should read it all, but to put forward the language as presented for executive officer elections.
Thank you, Sarah.
Section 4, little d.
Thank you, Sarah. Is there a second?
Yes, ma'am.
Second, Kirsten. Thank you, Kirsten. Sarah Siglio.
Yes, I apologize. I have a question because there's the issue with the charter and how it's not specific about at-large senators being full-time employees. So I just wanted to know if that was considered when this was written and I hate to bog it down, but need to ask.
Yeah, it was. But Sarah, do you want to?
Sure. So what was interesting is when we read it as full-time for the at-large. And I know that this will be a discussion point once we go through the bylaws. We'll talk about this at the next point too, but the other part that we were concerned about is there wasn't conversation around compensation and release already we were just getting that going for our full-time senators. So there's some like concerns that we have in just putting a part-timer in that predicament. But this was written with full-time in mind. I'll hand it over to Roberta because Roberta worked with us on this.
Hi, thanks. I was going to say, we also did talk about the part-time piece, especially after it was brought to our attention, the difference in the charge. I felt that given the level of work and the level of knowledge and experience and information, those executive officer positions require that it really necessitated a full-time employee to represent the staff and the faculty interests.
Thank you. I just wanted to know if it was considered.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good question. Thank you.
Seth?
Thank you, Al. Could we hold off on this until we have the discussion about part-time representation? It just seems that voting on this before we have had that conversation. Well, I do follow your point, Roberta, that it can be independent, but.
Seth, we already have a motion and a second, so this is the discussion. You could ask at the end when we discuss the part-time participation, you could ask for an amendment if it's appropriate at that time.
Well, I guess my suggestion would be to not move on this at this point. My suggestion, but until after we had the other conversation. But thank you, Al.
Thank you, John.
Yes. So I understand the thinking behind wanting to have this be a full-time position because of the question of compensation. And how that works into, standing agreements for how part-timers are paid and what their commitment is. But after we had that conversation, I think in elections maybe, we had a conversation with, I think it was President Minuko, about the fact that there are some positions that are part-time that have carve-outs for allowing additional compensation. It doesn't change their status. And so as I think about an executive officer position, if there was a way to provide release time or compensation for that part-time person that prevents them from affecting whatever agreement they have, then there really might not be another good reason to not have the option for a part-time person to be able to serve in executive position. In fact, it might actually fit really well if they have the time to, put into it. So similar to, I know we're voting on this motion, but does anybody have any other maybe information or details that can inform this vote? Or
if I remember correctly, I think months and months ago, somebody mentioned that because of money is involved, the part-timer would actually have to fill out a dual employment form. And if the part-timer is teaching 2 courses,
and
Angelo,
in that
case, yeah,
we're going to have this next conversation when we get to the charter
Okay, cool.
issue. Administration will actually, they're aware of the complexities of this, and they should weigh in.
All right, thanks.
Yes, sir.
And I would just follow up and say I would recommend maybe not passing this motion until we have a conversation about that, like what Seth had mentioned.
That would actually be to just vote against the motion.
Right. Yeah, that's what I would argue for.
Nicola.
No, I lowered my hand because I'm going to wait for the administration to speak on this first.
Okay, thank you. And Roberta.
Thank you. I was just going to say, I understand folks' concerns. We're looking at executive officer elections next month. I don't feel that we can hold off on voting on this. I do think that amendments can be changed. So, once I think that we put this in, and then next year, once we know the part-time situation is solidified, we can always revisit the amendment and make appropriate changes as necessary once that is solidified and ready to go. But for the sake of moving forward with necessary elections next month, I think it's important that we do vote on this piece. Thank you.
All right. We are limiting folks to speaking one time on each issue. So seeing no new hands, I am going to ask you to vote to, the motion on the table is to adopt the new language. If you are in support of adopting the new language, please raise your hand now. If you support this, adopting the new language, please raise your hand now. John, is the vote stabilized?
Yeah. Sorry, it keeps changing. I have 27.
27, yes. Thank you, sir. Go ahead and lower your hands, folks. Go ahead and lower your hands. Michelle and Rhonda, your hands are still up. If you are opposed, please raise your hand. If you are opposed, please raise your hand. Looks like 2 no, John.
Correct.
Go ahead and lower your hands. Any abstentions? Any abstentions? No abstentions. The motion carries. Sarah, is there additional language?
Yes. So under nomination, new section 5, vacancies and removal. We added language, motion to accept language written within this section.
As presented, Sarah?
As presented, in the yellow highlight.
Okay.
The yellow highlight, non-highlighted has been there.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Are there any objections? Are there any objections? No objections. Are there any abstentions? We have 1 abstention. The motion carries. Sarah, you have the floor.
Okay, so down to section 6, executive officers, we were looking to add the word senator. So I don't know. Maybe I'll just ask for a motion for this beginning section. So
is this through D? Is this through the highlight D? Is that what you're asking for?
yes, but this is a much longer section with officer positions and details. So maybe I'm asking, so I'd like to make a motion to accept the highlighted language for section 6, executive officers and senators, from the beginning portion here down to section C.
As presented, Sarah?
As presented.
Second.
Thank you. Thank you, Roberta. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Nicola?
Sarah, thank you for all the work you guys have done on this. Real quick question with the term limit. So it's 1-year term, so a 3-year term limit, that would all that a president, vice president, or secretary would be able to serve, even though they could serve 6 years on Senate.
Yes, and this was based on feedback that we received from that special meeting when we were discussing compensation a few months back.
Okay, perfect. I just wanted clarification. Thank you.
Alan?
Thanks, Al. I did put a note into the document. In the previous section dealing with staggered terms, establishing staggered terms, it's section 3 point, is that whatever I'm referring to that I can't quite see it. I'm just wondering if we need to have, where is this about the
I
staggered
apologize.
terms?
It's right here. So senator terms. So I believe what you were suggesting is should we reference the top to say we see staggered terms, or I don't know.
Yeah, something like that, just because it's, you know, we don't have, yeah, just to added language to, you know, in reference to those establishing the staggered terms.
Alan, I'm not following. You want staggered terms for e-board?
This is senators.
This
Senator
section
terms.
is executive officers and senators, and because we clarified officer terms
Oh,
here.
okay,
we're
I'm sorry.
clarifying senator terms, and so
Yeah, senator terms.
asking to reference back up here to the,
For the initial, let's see, where is it? So it had been passed previously. I think it's section 3.
Alan, why do you see referencing a document that we're actually working with as beneficial?
Just for clarification, I asked the question basically, because right now I was just reelected to a 1-year term, so I'm not serving a 3-year term, right? So we have language earlier in the document about for specifically for this year, right? Executive officers should be nominated by May 15th instead of April 30th. So section 3.1, it's actually in, yes, over here on the left. I'm just wondering if we should reference that.
So
Is there
Alan,
any place, is Roberta and Sarah, is there any place else in the document where we reference a different part of the same document?
I don't think so.
yeah, well, I think there's one place where we reference section 3. But I think that to satisfy Alan's concern, after May 31, I think we could just add following staggered terms. Or following a staggered term.
Following the establishment of staggered terms?
Sure.
Well,
I think that would work.
Alan, are you asking for a friendly amendment?
Yes, asking for a friendly amendment to add following the establishment of staggered terms. Thank you. I don't know if that needs a second or just agreement.
It requires a second, and then we have to vote on on the amendment.
I'll do a second.
Thank you. Anyone opposed? I'm going to try this. Anyone opposed to the friendly amendment?
Also, Sarah and Roberta.
Creative use of Robert's rules here. I think we're still okay. So I think the amendment stands, and seeing no further hands, if you support the motion as amended, please raise your hand. If you support the motion as amended.
You have 27.
27. Thank you. Go ahead and lower your hands. I think that means we'll have we've got 3 missing. Merdad, can you lower your hand? Any objections?
Sorry.
Any objections? No objections. Abstentions? We have 1 abstention. We've lost a couple of votes here. The motion carries. Sarah, do you have further language?
Yes. Okay. So we've voted up until part D. So part D is officer positions. So I'd like to make a motion to approve the language. I don't know if I should go officer position, vice position.
I would, just
Okay,
quickly.
so
I know it's
I'd
time,
like-
but
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion to accept Part D, little I, the president, officer position for the president as outlined in yellow. I think I have, yeah,
As presented?
as presented, excuse me.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second. Thank you. Any discussion? Any objections? Any objections? Any abstentions? The motion carries. Sarah?
Next one. I'd like to make a motion to accept the language of duties for the vice president of faculty or staff as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Who was that? Peter Astor. Thank you, sir. Any discussion? Miguel?
Just what I think is a quick question. Do you have language here, because I don't see it, regarding which VP takes over when?
We actually did discuss that, Miguel, and felt that we wanted to leave it open because it is likely that one would be more willing or able than the other, and to allow them to have that flexibility to rely on one another in that
So-
situation.
Which I can appreciate that
Yeah.
flexibility. I might suggest codifying that somehow to say in a situation where the VP, a VP is going to be taking over, there shall be, what is the process? Is it the two VPs decide? Is it the Senate decides? Like, how is that going to happen? Because I think that needs to be spelled out, allowing for the flexibility, but just so there is a process in place.
Good point.
Miguel, is that a friendly amendment?
Well, it's not specific language. I don't have specific language on the fly. I mean, we could say a catch-all like the Senate shall determine the process by which the vice president shall be selected. You could say something boilerplate like that and just leave it completely open.
The problem that I foresee with that is that if something were to happen to the president in between meetings and somebody needs to take responsibility and leading up to and during a meeting, putting that at the discretion of Senate means you don't have someone to do that work in order to make the meeting happen.
Well, that's fair. I mean, we could always refer to Alexander Haig for those of us who are old enough to get the reference, but you know.
All right. Any further discussion?
I don't have good language. I mean, I would suggest maybe we just keep that in the back of our minds as something that needs to be edited.
Something that we can fix. That's what I was going to suggest, Miguel. I'm going to ask, any objections? Any objections? Okay, no objections. Any abstentions? No abstention, the motion carries. Sarah.
Okay. We are cruising through. Okay, so next one is motion to accept language for secretary duties as presented.
I can second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Miguel?
Sorry, this is, I'm wondering about in 3 sub 1, the section of concise, the word concise. I
That
agree
language comes directly, Miguel, from the special meeting. That is exactly what folks asked for in the special meeting in March.
Okay.
I'm just providing the context and the background for why that language was chosen.
I'm a little uncomfortable with that word because being concise isn't necessarily always the best way to be complete. So I just raised that as a point of reference. That's all.
Seeing no additional discussion, any objections? Any objections? Seeing no objections, any abstentions? We have one abstention. The motion carries. Sarah, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. For the executive
Can I
council, yeah,
can I interject just because Elle, you said you're not monitoring the chat. Dr. Maduko had to step out. He's going to Central, but he said Dr. Heineck, Provost Brown, and Dr. Davis are still on the call and they're available to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Alan. Sarah.
so motion to accept additional language provided under executive council. Executive council is responsible for consulting and advising the Senate president.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, any objections? Any objections? No objection, no objections, any abstentions? The motion carries. Thank you. Sarah?
Okay. Oh, I should have highlighted this. I apologize.
Keep going. No, keep going.
I should have highlighted this. This is the senator positions. I apologize. This was not highlighted. So motion to accept senator positions as presented, senator duties as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Alan?
Under 5, under 6, participate in at least 2 subcommittees or councils. Aren't they technically committees, not subcommittees? We also have subcommittees, but
We could have a range of, we also have task force. Yeah.
I mean, like elections committee, right?
Right.
But course caps is a subcommittee, I think, or a task force.
Task force is what we have.
But I'm just wondering, is that accurate to call them subcommittees?
So if we're on the council, I'm sorry, I didn't raise my hand. I apologize.
Go ahead and respond. I think that Roberta and Sarah are responding to questions.
Thank you. So if we're on a council, then there are kind of task force that break off of that council. And you may be requested to sit on multiple councils, correct?
Yes. I don't think the question is about councils, though. It's about whether or not it should be committees or subcommittees.
Yeah.
Alan, is that?
Yes.
What if we said, well, never mind. I'm not going to do that.
I mean, Sarah, I think we could just remove sub and that would take care of all committees, subcommittees, and then some.
So that would be, sorry, Al, that would
Well,
be
if you don't, Alan, if you don't make the change, if Sarah makes the change and Roberta agrees with it, we don't have to vote on it. They're amending their motion.
And Sarah, I would also suggest that we also just add task forces just to cover our.
What if we said or other service?
Sure.
While they're making that change, Miguel.
I don't like service.
Yeah, I had a question about EI4. Senators are responsible for gathering feedback from other CT state senators prior to requesting items to be placed on the agenda as deemed appropriate. A, what is the rationale? And B, that seems like an awfully cumbersome obligation, especially if you want to get feedback from senators at the Senate meeting when everybody's there in the same place, as opposed to sending a billion emails back and forth.
Can I speak to that one, Sarah and Roberta? So actually, Miguel, it is putting the onus upon senators to have conversations before an item is requested on the agenda so that folks have the opportunity to find out if something is happening at their campus and the extent to which it is occurring. So that rather than having the initial conversation in a Senate meeting, the initial conversation happens via email, and then we have the meaningful discussion and make recommendations as we come together. And this is an effort to try to streamline our meetings so that we solve things in a more timely manner and in an informed way.
Okay. I can appreciate that. I think it should not be a requirement. I think it could be an encouragement. I think there are times, but I don't like the idea that a senator cannot bring an agenda item to the Senate unless they have consulted with other senators. I have a problem with that. And for that, I will have to oppose this part of it. Unless we change the language.
Roberta, your hand is up. Was that to respond to something else or?
I apologize, that was old. Okay. I'm just thinking through the language.
John.
Yeah, I would suggest changing the language to say not just other CT state senators, but senators from other campuses. Because I think the impetus behind this is that we're trying to gather issues and understand whether or not there are issues on other campuses. So just saying other CT state senators could avoid that. Like if I just talk to my other two CT state senators that are on my own campus, I won't actually be bringing a perspective that you're looking senators to bring before bringing an item to the Senate.
I think.
Go ahead, Roberta.
I apologize. It's such a bad habit. I think it's important that even if it's just a few nights before the meeting to send something out, that this is something that we're putting on the, we're going to bring forward to the agenda so folks can consult with their campuses. They can read through it, prepare their thoughts so that we don't have an overabundance of extra discussion, talking about the same thing over and over and over again, at least to be able to address some concerns and questions in advance if possible. And I think that the interpretation of that level of responsibility and gathering feedback is we're kind of keeping that open-ended, and there's not a timeline on it other than before the meeting. So that's one of the things that I liked.
I'm Miguel, because I've already come to you, I'm going to go to Seth.
Thank you, Elle. I just think with item 4, it's that might not always be feasible if there's something urgent that comes up and there isn't time to do that, and we want something to be added to the agenda, kind of even at the last minute. So I think there should be more flexibility, frankly, for senators to be able to add items to the agenda, and that language would become onerous to that.
Seth, are you remembering that the agenda can be amended at the beginning of every meeting?
So
this wouldn't prevent an item from being, this doesn't change the Robert's rules in accepting the agenda and being able to add.
It would.
So does that make the language not applicable? So what? I guess then what's the?
So
it
the
would,
aim, I think, is just
an absolute.
So it says so our thought process in this was to give senators a framework for, especially new senators coming in, how they can work. Like we've been doing this already. We've been sending stuff out before our meetings. We've been sharing stuff. So I think a part of this was to give new senators coming in also that framework of how we've been interacting already. And so I think that's the other piece is, thank you, Roberta, like thinking about it too is as deemed appropriate. Sometimes like we can't do that, right? But if I knew like bylaws, I could send out ahead of time. Course caps, we were able to send out a few days in advance. So that was our aim in this, is creating a description for those, especially coming on new.
I think that the as deemed appropriate responds to both Seth and Miguel's concern. Nicola?
I think it's important to keep that aspect of consulting other senators, whether they are on your campus or, I mean, especially if they're on your campus. I think that allows communication to stay open, right? Like, I don't think that we should have senators that are acting independently, representing a campus, that are not in conjunction or at least in consultation with others on their campus, bringing things forward to, or sending things forward to be added to the agenda. I just think that keeping each other in the loop is very important.
And Peter?
I was just going to say that maybe we just change it to being senators, instead of are responsible for, just are encouraged to gather feedback. Again, I think we're just trying to establish ways that we think are going to be most effective. So we don't have a lot of lone flyers and that type of thing. So perhaps a softening of the language a little bit addresses the issue. Just my thought.
I can hear that. That's what I'm hearing, is the responsible piece is the piece that might be where we're getting hung up. Are there suggestions for, I did see I can only see a small blue blurb on the top. Kristen said, was that Kristen, the senator shall gather feedback?
I just said are encouraged to, maybe, perhaps.
Yeah, shall attempt to gather feedback is what I put in the chat.
Sarah and Roberta, are you changing your motion or are we moving on to a vote?
I would be comfortable changing to shall. Shall gather feedback from.
I'm open to shall.
There's a wording.
That makes it stronger.
Can I point out a word?
I know. I know.
Go ahead, Miguel.
For 3 and 4, it ties into what we're talking about. If you look at senator position, senators shall from the beginning. For 3, it starts out with senators are responsible. So you're saying senators shall, senators are responsible. For all the other ones, you have the verb or the word directly, right? Senators shall represent, senators shall attend. So for 3 and 4, you just need to adjust the beginning of the sentence as well.
The shall, correct?
No, the shall is already there.
Senators are responsible.
So that's the problem. You have senators
At the
shall
top.
as the
At the
introduction
top.
to every single one of these.
Oh, gotcha. I see what you're saying. Gotcha.
Yeah, that's all.
Different
Thank
page.
you.
Okay. So I amended those. So yes, I'm open to an amendment.
I would second. I'd be okay with that.
Seeing no further hands, all those in favor, please raise your hand. In favor of the motion adopting this language, please raise your hand. John?
We're at 25.
Go ahead and lower your hands, folks. There we go. Thank you. All those opposed? All those opposed?
That's 2.
That was 25 yes, 2 no.
Yeah.
Go ahead and lower your hands. Any abstentions? And 1 abstention. Thank you. Go ahead and lower
2
your hands.
abstentions.
2 abstentions. Thank you. Sarah, do you have more language?
Okay, and my last one. Thank you, everyone. My last one is section 7, Senate actions. to change the language to resolutions. Senators may request resolutions to be placed on the agenda in consultation with the Executive Council.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, folks. Miguel?
What does that mean?
So this responds directly to the concern that I raised last fall, Miguel, that we have campuses and senators alike who are asking for resolutions to be put on the agenda, but we're finding that there's a lot of misinformation or inaccurate information in the resolutions themselves. And so we have to send it back to the campuses. And we don't want to be in a position of saying no. We want to be in a position of having a dialogue with the campuses so they have the opportunity to correct those before they are put on the agenda. So we're asking for increased dialogue with the Executive Council.
So how does the consultation with the Executive Council ensure the resolution is accurate? Because that doesn't involve a process of consultation with the campuses. So I'm a little confused. I'm not opposed to that. I'm just trying to figure it out.
No, I understand. I can actually thread the needle because of the trying to understand the difference between resolutions that come out of different campuses. So we have, in this last year, we have seen a number of resolutions that have inaccurate information about CT State or how something operates. And once it is sent to the Executive Council, we begin doing outreach, asking clarifying questions, and we're oftentimes able to find information that other folks didn't have access to. And so it's that consultation piece that permits us to find, hey, we've noticed this discrepancy, or are you aware of the inaccuracies of these things in your resolution? And so it becomes more of a dialogue.
Okay. So, okay, that's helpful. Thank you. So I think this is my last question. Do we need to delineate then between what is a campus resolution that is being brought forward to the Senate versus a resolution that is originating in the Senate as a Senate resolution?
Yeah, we do.
I feel like I'm writing this down for because I think we, as the bylaws committee, we can then go back and look at this. I mean, we still have May to look at some of this. So we could definitely even kind of fine tune that a little more.
So are you withdrawing your motion, Sarah, to work on this one some more?
I'd like to withdraw my motion on this one, and we can talk more about at our bylaws committee.
I might just suggest two separate bullet items, one for campus-based resolutions, one for CT State Senate resolution. Thank you.
Okay. Roberta, you support withdrawing this?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. All right. Seeing no further, and that's all you had, Sarah?
That's it.
Okay, thank you very much. So moving on to our next item, part-time representation on Senate. Alan, is your hand? Oh, you were clapping. Okay. I thought your hand was up already, Alan. All right. So we have done some incredible work with bylaws, and thank you to the bylaws committee for all that you have done and that you will continue to do as we wrap things up next month. But all of us are charged with and have read the charter, and none of us realized that the modifier of full-time was missing from the at-large position. And as elections most of the elections had already been reported, we had this issue raised, and I took it to the bylaws committee. I shared it with the elections committee, and I am now bringing this to Senate. It also intersects with the issue from last month that elections and bylaws were returning the issue of part-time representation to the Senate in light of a number of discussions that they have had that complicated adding part-timers adding part-timers to Senate as represented in Senate. Is that right, Sarah and Nick? Am I representing that? So I shared the charter with you. Hopefully all of you had a chance to look at that. Is there anyone who would like, there's not a motion, by the way, this is for discussion. And I think Sarah Siglio, you were enthusiastic and tried to get this in. So I'd like to go to you first.
The reason I tried to bring this up with President Meduco is because it's fundamentally a charter issue, and the charter comes from the administration, and Manchester still has to elect its at-large senator, and we cannot do that until we understand if the charter is going to be amended to include that full-time modifier to at-large, or if we are going to need to run this election to include part-time employees as eligible. And so, at least for our campus, this is a pressing issue because we would like to fill what's now a vacancy, because we are not able to get this one position done in time for the deadline as soon as possible. So we would appreciate a resolution on the issue.
Has President Meduco returned to the call? President Meduco?
No, he's not in the room.
Okay, thank you, Alan.
We have
Angela.
his reps.
Yeah. I'm gonna go to Mike, and hopefully the provost will be able to weigh in on these issues. They were both appraised of the issue as it was developing. So, but I want to hear from additional senators. Angelo.
So if memory serves me right, I think this discussion took place months ago, and Mia was part of this group at the time. I think she said that one of the issues was that because there's an additional credit for payment for the part-timers, those part-timers who are teaching 2 courses would actually have to give up one of their courses. Otherwise, they're going to go through the limit that they have contractually. And therefore, she wasn't too sure about how many part-timers would be willing to give up on a course to be on the Senate. So I think, again, this was like months ago, but that's what I think she said.
Mike, can you weigh in on this issue about both for Sarah and Angelo? Is there an intent by administration to clarify, to redefine that charter and clarify whether or not it's at large or not? But also, do you recall the pay issue related to part-timers that Angelo was raising?
Yeah, I can weigh in. I do not think there's an intent for administration to change the charter unless we get a request from the Senate. That language came from the original governance work group that was formed during the alignment process. That's verbatim from that work group's outcome. I think the only member maybe on this group that was from that group was Nicola. I think I shared, but my memory of that work group was that they did want that to be a full-time position. However, that's not how the language reads. But I believe that the idea was that there would be one faculty, one staff, and then one at-large from the faculty or staff. So by saying full-time and full-time, it was almost implied for the third category. But that's correct, it does not say that. If a part-timer was elected, they could either be given overload for a course for those credits. For service on the Senate, I believe it's 1.3 now. So that would not put them above the 8 credit limit unless they were already teaching 8 credits. But many of our adjuncts teach 6 credits, right? 2 3-credit courses. If it was not an adjunct and the person was a staff member, they would have to be paid as an EA, and they would be paid for those hours per week on a timesheet. We would have to develop a job description. So with your help, we would develop a job description for a senator for an EA position. We would have to run that through HR. That would have to be classified. probably with the discussions with the union as far as what that pay rate would be. So it gets a little tricky. That doesn't mean it can't be done, but you know, there's different process if the person is teaching or not teaching. And so that's my memory. But again, the charter again took from the original language. And so I see Nick's hand, maybe she can help clarify. But it's really, I guess, it's really your call, what you'd like.
Thank you, Mike. Seth, you're up.
Thank you, Al. So I would like to our Senate to support changing the charter so that part-time faculty and staff can serve on the Senate in the at-large position, certainly. So I guess I'll make that motion.
Seth, as it stands, you don't need a motion. Part-timers can serve in that position. That's the issue that we're bringing, that the qualifier doesn't exist for at-large. So as it is written, we didn't understand it that way. No one had recognized that full-time was missing from that, but we don't need to take any action if we want that to include part-timers, because it does in the language. We would need to take action if we don't want part-timers to serve in that position.
Okay. And thank you.
Nicola?
Do we have to worry about running afoul of Connecticut state statutes with if the employee should go over X number of hours and benefits and insurance and etc.?
Mike, I'm going to leave that one to you.
Yes, you would. Because there are union negotiated limits, right, with the adjuncts, and there are labor laws. So if someone got elected,
who was
it
already
may-
teaching 8 credits.
right, they may have to be restricted to 6 credits in the future.
And staff too, correct? They would end up having to pull back in their work capacity. then to
If
stay
they're at a
under that.
limit like 17 hours a week, yes, because this could put them over that limit, making them eligible. So it gets very confusing. Or not complicated, not confusing, complicated. Yes, Nick. Yep.
Thank you. Sarah?
Sorry, I have 2 things. What happens, so right now we saw a bunch of budget cuts and campuses were asked to look at their budgets, and we lost EAs and adjuncts due to enrollment and due to budget cuts. So 2 questions that I just wanted to throw out there, that was my original concern, is 1, what if someone is no longer employed from fall to spring? And so what happens to that? And 2, who's paying that contract for those extra hours? So if the campus was asked to have, cut that position or cut hours based on their budget, but now we're saying, well, you were elected, they have to find the money for. So I just wanted to know, how would that work, especially a part-timer who's vulnerable in that position?
So if they were not on contract, either teaching or part-time, they would have to be put on contract, on an EA contract. And the campus would be absorbing that cost. If it's an overload in a contract, it would be it would be come out of the part-time lecturer budget. If it was an EA, it would come out of the general cost for that campus.
Thank you, Mike. So folks, please keep in mind that we are running behind, and we will only be taking 1 comment from each senator. So if you've spoken, we're not going to come back to you. Miguel.
Yeah, I have two questions, or a question and comment, I guess. First, why would it be an EA contract for a staff member versus a PTL contract? If you're doing PTL contracts for faculty, why can't you do a PTL contract for the same reason, and then just avoid the whole issue of having to do a job description? I'm a full-time staff member, I get a PTL contract. So I'm not sure why you would have to do an EA contract. So that's my question. And second of all, it's always been my understanding that the 17-hour limit for staff, or the 8-credit limit, is not a contractual blockading. It is merely the threshold for which the state then has to give benefits. So there's not a prohibition on it. Rather, it is the threshold for which faculty or EA, PTLs or EAs would become benefit eligible. So that to me is somewhat of a specious argument, because that it's just about money and benefits. Now, I understand that's not a small deal, but there isn't a hard limit. We can exceed that if we have the will to do that. That's my understanding anyway. I could be wrong, but that's always been my understanding.
Yeah, Miguel, I'll just quickly answer the first part. The PTL contracts have to be connected to a course, right? So you don't, if you teach, you get a PTL contract, correct? But if you're just doing extra hours, there's no course that you can assign those hours to. So it's kind of a payroll issue that it's easier to generate a PTL contract as an overload for an adjunct than it is for a staff member, because a staff member doesn't have any course to overload, if you will. But I'd have to ask that. The second point is, you're right that is the cap. I worry that what might happen is, if someone was at 8 credits or at 17 hours and they were elected to a position, the administration at that campus may lower or take away a course so that they don't breach the benefit amount.
I understand that part. I just wanted to people are saying it's a contractual. I just wanted to clarify that it's not a contractual thing. It's an issue of the benefits threshold, which are that's where we get those magic numbers. All right. Thank you.
Yep.
John.
I think it was Alan before me.
Okay, Alan.
All right. Thank you, John. So I'm with Seth. Given all the difficulties we had in the elections committee trying to develop a framework for part-time elections, etc., and all of the issues that were never resolved, if we leave the language as is, this does allow each of the 12 campuses, according to their governance structure and governance bodies, to, open that at-large Senate position to a part-time staff or faculty member. And I guess my second point is that we had this discussion as well, is that we still need to honor that local campus governance structure. So if we leave it as is, I would look to see if our shared governance body wanted to include part-timers eligible to vote for and to run for this at-large position, and then we would amend our governance document to reflect that. Thank you.
And Alan, I have to say that this issue sparked a significant survey of the academic deans at each of the campuses, so that the Executive Council, we don't have the information ready yet. Once it is, it will be shared with Senate. But we are trying to understand, how many different shared governance bodies does each campus have? What is the structure? What is the participation of those bodies? And who are the leaders for each one? Because one of the things that we are finding is that only a very small number of campuses include part-timers in shared governance. And even when they do, I don't think any of them, and our data, I haven't finished a review, but so far, no one has part-timers sitting on their shared governance who also vote. And that is one, those are some of the complexities that we've started to run into, and some of the reasons for why I'm asking for a shared governance summit, where we really come together to try to understand what each campus does and how that works and who votes and who is represented, because those representation issues are starting to bear out at the Senate.
You might have more success with the shared governance leaders. I'd be happy to provide any feedback. I probably know it better on our campus than the dean does.
Well, we are collecting that information. We have started to establish those relationships, and we're working on
Great.
we're working on our own org chart now related to shared
I'm
governance.
happy to help with that if at some point.
Thank you, Alan. All right. So John, I think one of the things that's happening is because you're a co-host, you jump to the top.
Yeah.
And I don't know if Peter Astor is next or if you are next.
It's me and then Peter.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So two comments. One is the comment that you had made to Seth still stands, which is that because this is an existing issue, there's nothing stopping Middlesex from running their election and potentially electing a part-timer unless we get a change, which is not going to happen in this meeting before they have it. So the question about clarity and process for them, I think, is something that just needs to be clarified so they can run their elections. But separately, you know, the elections committee, there was a lot of talk about how to try and figure out how to make space for part-timers. And it was incredibly messy, incredibly difficult, and all sorts of things we couldn't find, you know, equitable answers for that made sense. But since we're now on the other side of this, now saying, how do we, you know, potentially solve all those problems that are going to happen because, you know, without further clarification, they are eligible. My recommendation would be that maybe we leave it as is and allow people to run elections. And then if a part-timer is elected, then we can look at that particular instance, which may be one part-timer out of, you know, 30 some odd senators. And then maybe that senator is at 8 credits or maybe they're at 6. And we could just deal on a case-by-case cases with these edge cases and solve them as we go. Because it could potentially be, you know, since at-large senators could be for a 3-year term. If we don't come up with an at-large senator now, that gives the Senate a minimum of 3 years to solve the problem. And then how many elections could we have before we run into like the perfect candidate that can't have any compensation, and then we have to solve that additional problem? It could be a long time and a moot point for us to get past what we need to do right now, which is solve one campus's election question.
Thank you, John. Peter?
Okay, I agree with John largely, but I think that this whole question about the at-large candidate could be rendered moot if we just said we're going to concentrate on figuring out, obviously not this semester, figuring out how we can get part-time or adjunct representation onto the Senate. Even a small number would really involve people who teach, you know, 40% of the students in this one big college. So I really could go either way on this at-large debate we're having right now, but I think we should spend maybe less time on worrying about the details of union compensation and more on the general idea that we need some kind of voice from part-timers.
Thank you, Peter. Roberta?
Thank you. I think these are all good, valid points, but you know, we've discussed the part-time situation at length at numerous meetings, numerous committee meetings, and we get tripped up every time because there are so many different scenarios and situations. I would agree with John that until we can figure out how we can have part-time participation in a way that's equitable and meaningful to the body, then I move that we request Dr. Maduko to change the charge to include the word full-time before non-management for 13 voting full-time non-management at-large members at this time.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Who was second?
Bonnie.
Bonnie, thank you. Any further discussion? Seth?
Thank you, Al. So I just want to second what obviously I do not think we should be excluding our part-time faculty and staff from participating in Senate, which is what this motion would do. And frankly, using the rationale that we can't pay them is not a valid rationale. We have a student senator. We just said we want to bring on board. We didn't they not to have a student center because we can't pay them. And I think the compensation argument is, frankly, we're looking at what's the worst case scenario that might happen and using that as a reason to exclude a large percentage of our workforce. So I think that's really a bad idea. And we may not run into any of these issues in terms of compensation, frankly. And as Peter just said, if we do, we can deal with it then. But excluding, frankly, thousands of workers because of a potential concern over compensation, based on the state not wanting to pay workers, is really, I think, I think that's the wrong decision. So I would strongly advise us to vote no on that.
Nick, did you lowered your hand? You're good. Okay. Seeing no further hands, all those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand.
What was the motion again, please?
Brian, can you read the motion?
I actually missed the motion. I was going to ask you once we were done.
Roberta, it's adding full-time.
I thought it would keep the language.
Right before the word non-management, Brian.
My apologies. I misinterpreted that in the writing. I'm going to change it right now.
John, has the vote stabilized?
Yeah, 19.
19. Thank you. Go ahead and lower your hands. All those opposed? All those opposed?
Looks
John,
like we're at 8.
8 opposed? Thank you. Go ahead and lower your hands. Any abstentions?
Looks like two
No
abstentions.
abstention. The motion
Sorry,
carries.
3. Hold on. 4. 4 abstentions.
4 abstentions. 4 abstentions.
Bring us to 29 in the count.
Okay. So folks, I just want to be clear about what this means. This means that we will ask President Maduco to make that change. Does not mean that the change is effective at this time. We have to ask for that change. It actually, Sarah, I think that this continues the ambiguity for Manchester. You could elect a part-timer right now, because as the charter currently reads, the qualifier of full-time is not there. Sarah.
I was just going to ask that Maduco's decision be communicated as quickly as possible after it is made.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, ma'am. All right, folks, we are running 33 minutes late. If we could have a 5-minute timer for our break, we will take a brief break and we will return and pick up with new business. All right. Welcome back, folks. We are going to return, and our attention now shifts to new business. The first item under new business is proposed meeting dates for CTC Senate for academic year 24-25. We distributed a survey and worked to solicit input. The most controversial day was the suggested day of August 30th. However, there were only a couple of comments related to that, and the concern was there was still a high enrollment period. The bigger concern expressed was the need to meet early in the semester to find out what happened over summer and to become aware of those things prior to an in-person meeting in September. We only had one comment that spoke against meeting in person, so I am making that recommendation, possibly at Manchester, space permitting and being able to work with that campus. The remaining dates, so the dates we're proposing are August 30th, September 27th, in person with a remote option, August 25th, November 22nd. We are not recommending a December meeting, January 24th, February 28th, March 28th, April 25th, and May 23rd. Is there a motion to accept the dates as presented?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Peter. Is there a second?
Second, Kirsten.
Thank you, Kirsten. Any discussion? Miguel?
Just a quick question. For those of us who are not returning, should we abstain from this vote?
No, you are an elected senator, and this is a motion before the Senate, so you can, please still vote, Miguel.
Okay.
Thank you. Seeing no further hands, all those in favor of adopting the meeting dates, please raise your hand.
I see 21.
21, thank you. Go ahead and lower your hands. All those opposed? Opposed? No opposition, abstentions.
I see 5 abstentions.
5 abstentions. Thank you very much. The motion carries. Moving on to the new academic calendar. Karen, are you here?
I am remote from Central Connecticut State University. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Now, you asked if I could share the updated response. So I am pulling that up now.
So thanks, Al. I appreciate that. So what you have before you is actually not the academic calendar. What it is, it's about campus closures and holidays. I'm sure many of you remember February, Lincoln's birthday, lots of confusing communication. Are we open? Do we have classes? What is happening? And what this list is really just to address that so that everyone knows the specific dates that we are closed as far as our campus goes based on all of our union contracts. Because remember, we have multiple employee groups and their holidays may be different dependent upon what their job is. So that's the document that you have in front of you.
So Karen, how was this document different from what you had shared earlier?
The only thing that's different is because my understanding from the Common Calendar Committee multiple years ago before my time, and again, that's a committee that I believe was between CSCU and the community colleges, when they were the 12 legacy campuses, they came to a common agreement on certain dates that the faculty would have class, so that if students were taking classes across CSCU, they would have a similar schedule. So the only difference is the November 27th date, in which we believe that the college will be open, but there are no classes because it's believed that there are 3 days that the faculty have no class on based on holidays. The 3 holidays that our management gives them the information annually, those include this coming year in 24-25, that the faculty would be observing Columbus Day / Indigenous Peoples Day on November 27th. And that's the day before Thanksgiving. So the college would be open, all campuses would be open because not all employees have that date off, but the faculty would not be teaching class.
Okay. Karen, what are the other 2 dates for the faculty
So
holidays?
my understanding is that the other 2 dates are Washington's birthday, which is also observing President's Day, and Good Friday.
Thank you. All right.
And I believe we really wanted to bring this forward as an informational item so that we can then bring it forward to the Board of Regents.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing screen so that I can see hands. Mike.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify something CEO Heineck said, and I put a link in the chat. The academic calendar was created by a system-wide calendar committee run out of the system office. And the link that I put there links to ct.edu, where the academic calendars have been mapped out through spring of 2028. And that group had to take into account the labor contracts, the holidays, specific starting and ending dates for CSCU faculty, community college faculty, all of that information that Karen had shared. Sometimes folks ask and say, well, why do we have a reading day, in the middle of the semester on a Tuesday? Or why is this class not meeting on a Friday? And that's because these have all been mapped out and approved by the Board of Regents for academics. It's really about class activity and when classes meet. I think the document that you're sharing really goes beyond that and talks about individual campus closings. And there's often confusion when there's no classes, but a campus might be open. So I just want to let people know that those calendars have been mapped out. Obviously, if there was feedback, you could ask for a revision. But I'm not sure folks are always aware that was done, and that was a conscious effort to align between community colleges at the time and the CSUs. Thanks.
Thank you, Mike. Nicola?
This committee that helps map out these calendars, are there any faculty or staff from the campuses or the colleges serving on those? And is there any opportunity for those who would be inclined to actually be able to participate?
Yeah, I'd have to go back and look. Nick, I believe there were faculty serving because I seem to remember nominations or elections occurring at campuses for people to serve on that. I know Ryan Pearson, when he was working at Capitol, was involved in that committee. So I'd have to go back and look. Usually it's an ad hoc committee that gets called and then they map out, 8 or 10 years of calendars. So it's a good question. I'd have to go back and I have to ask system office who was on that and, exactly who was involved. I don't see any records on that on the page.
And I don't have it in front of me, but I know that President Rook served on that committee. He did give me the notes of that committee, and I can forward that to Al. I'm just not in a place that I can do that at this moment in time.
Thank you. That would be helpful, Karen.
Happy to do it.
Bonnie?
A clarifying question, and I apologize if I missed this. I didn't see the screen at the time, but November 11th and February 12th, does that also mean that there are classes being taught during those those days or no? Since
Classes
there's
do,
clarification on other days that are no classes, but I'm wondering because they're floater holidays that can be used,
yeah,
right? But so does that mean that there are classes those days?
there are classes on November 11th, just like there are classes on Columbus Day and Indigenous People Day, because the observation of that day is actually on November 27th.
So that would be the same for the 12th as well, correct?
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
you're very welcome.
All right, seeing no further questions. Thank you very much, Karen. We appreciate you coming to Senate. If you could, I think you're going to give me some information, and if we
I
have
am.
any additional questions, I will send them your way.
Thanks so much, Al.
Thank you. All right, moving right along. Recommendations from the Course Cap and Cancellation Task Force. Peter and Angelo.
Yes, hi.
Do you want me to try to share the recommendations?
It'll be great. It'll be great. Thank you.
No promises here.
I know.
Actually, Peter, can you pull up the recommendations? I lose track of the whole meeting when I do that. Can somebody from the task force go into the folder and pull that up? Thank you. And can you increase the maybe 125?
Make it 300.
So can you talk a little bit about, can you give folks some background on the work that was done prior to making these recommendations?
Definitely. Peter, if you don't mind, I'll go first. So the subcommittee was put in place to answer to the very long problem of seeing courses canceled and not knowing what happened to those students that got their courses canceled. And as time went by and our enrollment kept on going down, it seemed like something had to be done to see if the bleeding could have been stopped. On top of that, that's where the cap issue comes in. There was like this very long issue for, I mean, an issue was there for a long time where colleagues kept on complaining how courses were canceled too early and how the number of students that were in the course that got canceled were not really that few. That course could have run rather than canceling it. So, and I know I've been working in the system 30 years now, maybe now more. And I really thought, together with other colleagues, obviously, there was a time to do something about it. When initially this task force was put together, it was amazing to learn that I was not the only one feeling that way. A lot of colleagues from around the system were also interested in pitching in and try to resolve this issue. And this proposal, as imperfect as it may be, is trying to resolve some of those issues, trying to keep students in the classroom, right? That's what we were hired to do, and see if we could help in seeing that happening. So that is the gist of this proposal. Peter, would you want to add something to it?
Angelo, I would like to add something, and that
I was
is,
going to ask that. Yes, go ahead.
yeah, that is that the committee itself really had two stages. There was a a very small group of people that worked this fall, and then Angelo and Peter asked for more help. And we really ended up with a vibrant community or committee, a vibrant committee of folks who were interested in finding out, well, what processes were used, what data informed decisions. And we met weekly throughout the semester. Angelo, you said that these are imperfect recommendations, and they are, but they're a really good beginning point. And they seek to, oh, hello, to, you're sharing your screen and we can see your search, Peter. Hello, Copilot. They are imperfect, but they seek to respond to specific issues that were brought up. So Peter, if you could move back to the document, thank you. And we are asking for some new groups to begin meeting, and specifically that is the discipline groups at the colleges where there is a discipline with full-time faculty. We think that they should be the ones that are looking at the schedule once the campuses draft the schedule, and really responding to those issues where we know we have too many sections scheduled. And it's unfortunate to say, but there are times when we do have too many sections where we know that that's going to be a problem. So
just to give people members an idea, we're not talking about here 2 or 3, 5, 10 courses. We're talking here almost 1,000 courses being canceled with a very conservative figure of at least 1,000 students, right? They just were notified that the course was canceled. And by the way, some colleges don't even do that. I mean, I am Middlesex, I'm very fortunate because I know that we do take the time to notify our students whose courses got canceled, they were canceled.
Well, Angelo, I
in
think
some other situations, they don't even know that.
They notify them. It's just the efficacy of how they're notified and the timeliness that varied, right?
Right. So, but again, if we're not worrying about 10, 20 students, that really is, again, 1,000 students is a very conservative. Realistically, we're talking about 3,000, 4,000 students.
Well,
because of course they get canceled.
We know that 1,000. Right? We don't know the.
I know, but I mean, it's a conservatively at least one per course, right? So that's 1,000. More realistically, you got 2, 3 students in those classrooms, courses that get canceled. So, but yeah, I mean, we can say that it's at least 1,000 or a little bit, I mean, around that. So it's not a concern that is about a handful of students. These are like a large numbers of students. And on one hand, people say, oh, we're losing students and what we're supposed to do to get the students. And there's always this complaint that I heard for 30 years. And again, this proposal is trying to address some of those issues.
Okay, can you hear me
That is
now?
the
Angela?
spirit behind it.
Yes, Peter, we can hear you. So we're going to go to Peter and then Betty. So Peter, go ahead.
All right. I guess what we really were looking at when we started talking about it last September, when we all got together in person, is that some campuses had course cancellations very early. Other campuses were a lot later. And we felt there was some confusion and I guess in some ways lack of equity in terms of early cancellations. And the other thing is that some colleges had classes run with only a handful of students. Other colleges were using something like 15 as a cutoff point. So we wanted to get together and provide some kind of system-wide guidance for this so that we could have similar, if not identical, course cancellation dates, and that we could get a handle on what we really need in terms of students for a course to run. And this, of course, brings up the whole idea of the larger campuses versus smaller. And so it's been a very, it's been a difficult journey, but I think the presentation here is general enough so that we can work with it, particularly if the deans will communicate openly with us. All right, thank you. I think that's all I need to say.
Okay, thank you. Alan.
Thanks, Elle. And I do want to thank Angelo and Peter for all of their work on this. I was also part of this subcommittee and enjoyed working with you. I want to point out a couple of the key issues here. One is that, and I know Mike has his hand up, so I had asked several times why benefits were being included in the overall cost of running a PTO, right? An additional class. Benefits are paid by the state of Connecticut to full-time employees, and part-time employees are not paid those benefits, right? We've already had that discussion earlier today. So we found that the break-even point was 10 students registered for a class, not the 18 that was being proposed by the administration. And that's probably going to be a point of contention, but this is our recommendation. Secondly, we found that 28% of students register for their first class, their first section of a semester, beginning 2 weeks before the start of classes. So from that 15-day point to drop add, when drop add closes, 28% of students register. That's more than a quarter. And so that's why we set the first cancellation meeting for 15 days before the start of the semester. We think that gives a more accurate picture. Instead of canceling classes a month ahead of time, I think the first cancellation meeting for the summer is set for May 6th. So that's like 3+ weeks. Our recommendation is 15 days. And of course, we recognize that that final cancellations do have to be made a week before the start of classes. And so the final cancellation meeting is set for 9 days before the start of the semester. So those are, I think, the key points that I wanted to highlight. We also focused on a systematic way to notify students that they have been transferred to a new section of this is either an online or LRON class, not on-ground classes, that there may be a change in textbook and a link to where they can then either repurchase, return, etc., deal with that textbook issue. So those are some of the main points of this, and I know that others want to speak to it, but I'm going to make a motion that we accept these recommendations as a Senate and present them to the administration.
Second that.
We have a motion and a second. Seth.
Thank you, Al. So I want to know if we could go through them, if we can go through them individually, because there are some that I think there may be consensus for and others not. But also, I can't speak and say that this is a, I don't know that I can speak for my campus, frankly, to say that some of these, or from department chairs and coordinators more specifically, to say whether or not they would want to do this or not, because this hasn't been shared with them. And I thought the original plan was to share this with our faculty and get their feedback. I thought that was the original plan. We were going to send out a survey, share this as our recommendation, and then send this out as a survey. But now I'm hearing the plan is to just send it to management. So I guess my first question would be, I have an opinion on all these, but I question why we're not sending this out to have program coordinators and department chairs review this on our campuses before we make this recommendation, and that's what I have a concern about that. But also, just to speak to number one while I'm talking, the number one recommendations, I'm not quite sure what this means. Are we saying that we don't think a course with less than 10 students should run? What do we mean by minimum enrollment?
Peter, can you go back?
Okay, let's see.
Actually, Seth, it says that campuses can make a different decision. A campus can lower it. A campus can lower it.
If they can do a written justification, they can lower it. That's basically what we said.
Who did that written justification go to?
I guess it probably goes to Mike, who will say no, and then we'll be back here again.
No, but specifically, we're proposing that our campuses have to send a written justification for every low enrolled course, and then Mike Stefanowicz decides whether it should run or not.
Well, I was being a little facetious at the end, but we need, what this states is that there has to be some written justification for a low enrollment course running. We did not state specifically who that goes to, but if I suppose in some respects, if the campus CEO approves, or the academic dean of the campus approves, then it should be allowed.
Actually, what we said is it should be published for transparency purposes, Seth.
Okay, thank you.
So sorry, I had to pull it up on a different monitor. What we're asking for is to understand why courses with less than 10 students are running, so that we all know, so that when there are classes that make with 3 students, that we know and understand that rationale, and we can use that rationale when a campus elsewhere is trying to recommend a course be canceled for 9 students. So we're actually seeking to bring transparency to this issue.
But it's unclear so they're going to send the justification to our Senate, and then our Senate's going to publish it. I just need clarity on what exactly we're recommending.
Well, the academic deans meet and make
Right.
these decisions in private right now. So they already have a process that is not transparent, that is not published, and they have joint meetings where they make some decisions together, but then they all go back to their campuses, and this really plays into that that competition, that Hunger Games that I was speaking to earlier, that when they come together, there is supposed to be collegiality and there's supposed to be a baseline understanding. But as soon as they go back to their campuses, it's really, it becomes territorial, and that competition is increased. And so while we don't know all of the processes that they have, we weren't able to learn those, but what we are asking for is transparency, that it be published so that we all know what those rationales are, so that those rationales can be applied evenly to all courses.
Well, a couple more things I'd like to add to that is, number one, those courses are not going to be canceled, Seth. They're not. They're going to be merged.
But I guess I'm just clear. We're recommending, just so we're clear, we're recommending that courses should not run if they don't have 10 students.
No, did not say that.
No, that is not what we're saying.
That's what it
We're
says.
saying-
Minimum enrollment for a course to
Seth,
run.
we are saying that when a campus makes a different decision, that rationale be published.
When campuses deviate from the
Minimum course enrollment of 10 students, those justifications should be published for transparency purposes.
And on top of that, we said 10 with the financial aspect of the courses in mind, right? Because we said, as you heard before, Alan saying, 10 is when we break even. So we're not running these courses at a deficit. And on top of that, by having the pros, right, the discipline coordinators, putting together the offerings, right? That should avoid that what we've seen so far, which is offering too many sections of a course that leads to 1,000 courses being canceled. I mean, grasping, keeping the grip on what it used to be, what has been done to date, I don't think that's really working. We have all these thousands of hundreds and hundreds of courses being canceled. So that's not sustainable. So what we're proposing is a system that is better in transparency, with financial wisdom in mind, and most importantly, we are trying to keep those students in the classroom, not in the classroom, in the course. Because as Alan said, these are like for online and L-run courses only, not on-ground courses. On-ground courses be run the way they've been running until now. So we're not trying to hurt anybody. If anything, we're trying to help students to stay their courses, faculty to keep it teaching, try to be revenue neutral if possible and not being in red. So that's what we're trying to do.
Just a question, why the change from sending this out to the faculty and staff for their input as opposed to us just making the recommendation to management?
I'm not going to
Can
answer
I
that
speak to
question.
that since that was my motion? Ellen?
Yes, sir, please.
I'm willing to see that happen. I'm willing to withdraw my motion to get that feedback. I do have a concern though that here we are 3 weeks from the end of finals, right? And is there going to be ample opportunity to share this and get feedback prior to our May meeting?
There is, Alan, because I will create the survey this weekend so that it can be shared by Tuesday. So
Totally in support of that.
I am willing to make sure that happens so that senators can share this by Tuesday.
Okay, if thank you, Al, then I withdraw my motion.
You can make a motion that we are going to send this to the campuses for feedback, and we will bring this back in the May meeting.
I'd like to amend my motion to say that this will be sent to campuses for feedback, and it will be taken up. That feedback will be taken up in the May meeting, at which time we will consider sending our recommendations to the administration.
And Angelo, you are amenable to that change? Yeah, okay.
Yes, indeed. Look, we're not hiding anything from anybody. I mean,
Right.
there's no intention to run our own show here.
Thank
at
you.
all. So
I'm
the
going
more
to
open,
move
the
on
better.
to a couple more hands, Angelo. Roberta and then Norley.
Thank you. I appreciate all of the work. You clearly have done a tremendous amount of work on this, but I have some questions, a statement. I was going to make a friendly amendment, but I will pass on that. I'm just wondering what deans of faculty, like PCs and DCs, if any, were consulted. There seems to be, from my point of view, I look at some pieces that it feels to me like that's like specifically a dean's responsibility. And then I'm wondering if any student affairs people were involved in the discussion about the student notification piece. As someone who works very closely with the enrollment processes for students and advising, there's a lot of issues with that, in my opinion. And then when we do vote or discuss, I think it would be more beneficial to the conversation if we attacked and discussed each piece individually, one at a time. Thank you.
So thank you, Roberta. Norley?
Thank you, Al. I understand you leave some window for the campus to deviate from the minimum course enrollment. But for the small campuses like ours at QVCC, having a minimum 10 would affect a lot of students for advanced courses. For some of them, it will be very, very difficult to reach that number. For example, Calculus 3. And, or we would need to give those students some alternatives. So if they cannot find this course in person, probably another campus can offer that course as L1 or online, because some students always look for a specific semester where we offer that course. So when we cannot offer it, and despite that they know this course is running every fall, for example, or every spring. So if we have to cancel it because of that minimum requirements, would affect them very, very, very hard. So that's why.
But Norley, do you see
Only
that the
specific.
campuses can deviate?
I think it should be something general. The campuses that need can make decisions to do it, but it should be also something general for not to put that minimum expectation 10 for some advanced courses.
Okay, thank you. Mike.
Yeah, I wanted to thank the group. You reached out and met with me and with Ryan a number of times to get clarification on that. We really appreciate that. I'm wondering if either we could scroll through the document or it could be posted and shared. I haven't seen the final recommendations yet. I know I'm just a visitor at the meeting. But one issue, I posted a few things in the chat, but one issue I wanted to just raise was about the discipline groups. And we talked about this, I think, in our sub meeting. There is no formal mechanism for discipline groups to gather right now. And you did clarify at our meeting, you were not talking about the SDCs, which are representative groups. I believe you were referring to discipline groups, which would have every faculty member full-time teaching in that discipline. So unlike an SDC where it might have, I think it's Global and Human Studies is the one that has history and anthropology and something else. You know, a discipline group, the history folks will be looking at the history courses, right? I'm wondering if you're able to address that. About how those groups would be called and met, who would coordinate that, especially with a quick turnaround of a few days.
We're not trying to reinvent the wheel. I mean, these meetings happen already. Every year, once or twice a year, faculty get together, are asked to put a schedule together, right? The only thing that's been detrimental in this system is that I have no idea what Three Rivers is offering.
Well, hold on, Angelo, to Mike's question, because we really have gone over. Mike,
Okay, sorry.
we started to flesh that out a little bit, but we acknowledge that some additional work will need to be done in order for faculty groups to meet.
Absolutely.
But we did respond to the feedback that you gave us. Rather than going through this because we are over time, Mike, I will share this with you. We will get the survey out. What we now need from senators is to share the survey link with the folks on your campus. And really, I think ideally, the 3 campus senators would meet with department chairs, deans, and program coordinators to go through and talk about exactly what these say. But that also means that our senators need to read these carefully and ask questions of the task force ahead of time, because in every single recommendation, the language was labored over, and it is intended to be quite nuanced and respect most of the process that has been used up to this point, but also seeks to bring transparency and is starting to address the competitiveness and the finite number of students that we're dealing with. So these are complex, and we are asking senators to take time to really read these and raise questions with the task force ahead of time if you have them.
Everybody's input is very, very important, and we will definitely read all the comments that everybody has to make or is going to make.
Correct. Thank you. All right. Seth, you've already spoken on this issue, so I'm not going to come back to you. We are going to go ahead and move on to the next issue. The next item on our agenda is the home campus default for course search.
I'm sorry, just real quick, just there was a motion in a second, wasn't there? Or
No,
Yes,
they
no,
withdrew.
there was
Oh.
no vote. You did ask me.
I was just gonna say that. I was gonna
Holy
stop
cow.
the meeting as well. There was,
Thank you.
there was a motion and an adjustment to the motion, and there was an agreement that we would vote.
Thank you. Sorry about that, folks. I'm really trying to get us back on track. I appreciate it. Where are we? Brian, can you read the motion?
So there was a withdrawal of the original motion, and then there was an agreement from both senators that there was be an amendment to send the document to campuses for feedback. So
Right, thank you.
the original one was withdrawn, and now we have a motion and a second on to send this to campuses for feedback.
Right.
Brian, the motion also included the provision that feedback be discussed at Senate
Okay.
in May. Thank you.
All those in favor of soliciting feedback from the campuses via a survey, please raise your hands. John?
Still growing. Right now we're at 30. Yep, 30.
Okay. Go ahead and lower your hands, folks. Any opposed? Any opposed? Any abstentions? One abstention. All right, the motion carries. Thank you for catching that, folks. I appreciate it. Moving on to home campus default for course search. Peter, is that you, or are you going to turn that over to Jacob?
I'm actually going to turn it over to Norley to read the resolution, and then Jacob's available for questions.
Okay, Norley.
Okay, thank you, Vida. This resolution, we're looking for the City State Senate we're looking for endorsement from the Senate. It's a proposed resolution on course search home campus priority. Peter, I don't know if you can share it in the chart so everyone can see it, just in case they didn't have a chance to look at it on the portal. The city-state state students have access to a large offering of course sections through courses at their own home campuses, as well as via seamless cross-campus enrollment at other campuses. Enrollment at other campuses is usually through an online course modality, though students can sometimes make the trip for in-person classes at other campuses as well. This allows students with busy schedules more options to fit classes they need at time that work for them. There are still benefits to prioritizing enrollment at a home campus, such as the ability to build relationships with other nearby students, staff, and faculty. Those connections with faculty enable faculty to better advise students, to place them in relevant internships, and to write strong letters of recommendation for students applying for scholarships and transfer. This is true even of online courses, where sometimes the ability to meet in person for office hours to resolve concerns or misunderstanding can be helpful. So the home campus tutoring services are also better equipped to assist students with courses offered at that home campus. So the current online course search system will search courses by various parameters, but does not currently default to showing sections offered at their home campus. This leads some students with no preference on which online section they prefer to enroll in a section at another campus, depriving them of the benefits of taking that course on their home campus. by changing the priority on how courses are displayed in course search, we can make it easier for students to enroll in home campus sections that work for them. So at this point, be it solved that student course search should sort by home campus of the student conducting the search first before any other considerations. So that's the resolution shared with the City State Senate. I believe that you receive a copy of it. Our expectations is to receive your endorsement and we can move forward with it.
And if you'd like, I can address some concerns that have been raised about it first.
Hi, Jacob. If
Yeah.
you could introduce yourself, if you could provide some context for, I believe that CT State has responded to this resolution. Did you folks receive that response?
We've received a few different responses. I got responses from Jared Borick. I also got through Karen Hynek responses from, I forget the names now, but some people. I think,
Mike
yeah, I think it was
Stefanowicz,
Mike.
Gail Barrett in
Right.
particular.
Right, and I appreciate those responses. They're not sufficient to what we're asking for. And so one thing to clarify, because people have raised it, yes, the student would have to be logged in to be able to sort by their home campus, right? So that was sort of the assumption that they would be logged in. So anyone not logged in, it's, how can you know their home campus? The responses, I'm sure Mike can say what, students can sort by campus, but then it doesn't show all of the other things. So like you can choose to just search for, I'm sorry, myself. I am the president of the QV, Quinnebog Valley Academic Senate. So I was the president of the body that passed this resolution. The resolution explains itself. I won't belabor the point, but the idea is that if you are looking for sections of an online course and the student doesn't care which section they want to enroll in, they're just going to go down the list and try and pick one, and it's better if they pick the home campus. I think most faculty would agree. If they don't care, pick the home campus. If they have a preference for a specific faculty, hey, they can look for whatever they'd like, right? The issue with the current way of sorting it is that when students are just searching for, let's say, an online, English 1010, they're not going to want to just restrict themselves to QV because they want to see what all the sections are available, right? Maybe things don't work for them. And so it's better if they're searching just in general, if that automatically sorts by their home campus. We currently don't have the ability with the back-end system for the course search display stuff to actually sort by that. But the technical problem to do this is fairly straightforward. You do a single query to a database to find their home campus, you pass it to the course search, you sort a list by the search. Like it's not a difficult technical problem, but it will take probably paying a vendor or negotiating with Lucian or whoever it is that we're working with on this in order to get them to implement this sort of customization, which is why in asking about this, we passed the resolution and are seeking the endorsement of the Senate to make it clear that this is a priority, that it is important that students that we make it easy for students to enroll in home campus sections. Yeah, anyway.
You mute Al.
Al, it shows you're muted.
Thank you. If whoever's screen sharing could stop screen sharing so we can go ahead and have a conversation about this. I am going to start with Mike so that he can respond and then we'll go from there. Mike? Mike, you are on mute, my friend.
I lowered my hand and forgot to unmute. Boy, two things at once. I appreciate the ability to respond, and I appreciate that my response when CEO Hynek reached out was shared. I think there's merit to the proposal. I like that the language says should sort. I just want to reiterate that this is not something we have control over. There's been lots of concern over the search screen that Lucian has provided to us, that it only shows 25 courses as a default, that it used to display things differently. That is the product that we got. with this version of Banner, and the old course search is not supported anymore. So folks have asked, why can't it be like it was last year? It simply cannot be that based on the product we bought. That doesn't rule out a customization, Jacob. I understand what you're saying, that it seems like a relatively simple customization. However, we can't make that customization. That would be an Ellucian piece, and we might have to pay them or pay a consultant, and then that customization would have to be upgraded every time there's a Banner upgrade. So it's not as simple as flipping a switch. There's other things people have asked to sort and search by part of term. I don't think that has that. There is an ability to search by campus currently, but I just wanted to let people know that, you know, fully, you can certainly support the motion, but it's not going to change tomorrow if you vote on this, because there's just a technical part that we don't have control over. And we can investigate what that would look like, and look at the cost, and we bring that back. And if it's a major cost, you know, we may ask that you identify saving somewhere else to pay for this. I don't know. You know, you can search by keyword, so that may handle, I see someone asking about searching by instructor, but there's items we just don't have control over. So I just wanted to share that. Again, not speaking for or against the resolution. Thank you.
Right. And just to clarify, we're aware of that. That's why we're proposing this and trying to get endorsement to make it, to see if it is academic priority, we can make that clear. That's, yeah.
Jacob, would QV be amenable to senators taking this back to their campuses and having it endorsed by all 12, by the 11 other campuses?
I'm open to whatever. It wasn't clear to me what the best process to try and get additional support for this was. So that's why I asked the Senate to consider it. If taking it back to individual campuses is the best way forward, I'm happy to do that.
Thank you. Let's see, where are we? Stephen and then John.
Yeah, I guess I just have a lot of questions in the technical aspect of how possible it is. Like, if before I bring it back to the campus, and I know I was emailing Tamika, because I'm always emailing Tamika, about what's possible within our core search system and stuff like that. What is the cost of it? Because if we're saying it's possible and this ends up being a huge cost in order to do it, it changes the conversation quite a lot, right? And I think it sounds easy to be able.
Stephen, could you start capturing your questions and maybe sharing them with other senators so that we're not asking the same questions that you've identified, but we also create a list of questions that administration might respond to?
Yeah, no problem.
You can name the other questions you have just so that we know them. I just think that sharing the questions that you have and putting those together so that we're capturing them is important.
Yeah, my brain's processing this.
That's okay.
So
No worries.
I guess my number one would be, if it is possible, what's the technical cost of being able to do it, and does it justify the cost of having to do it? 2, if we're sorting by home campus, by individual, does Ellucian even have the ability to be able to talk to our other systems to be able to list it as a home campus? And I guess those 2 is where I'll stop for now, because I feel like both of those are important questions, if the tech is possible and if the cost justifies the ability.
Yeah, and to be clear, it is not currently possible with our current product and system. That we know. It is a technical problem that is an easy technical problem. That doesn't mean it will be a cheap solution. So we need to request and get that information.
John.
I was just thinking it would be nice if we could expand the scope just a little bit to also include students that are not affiliated with a specific campus, but just happen to be searching from a geographically location that's close to a campus, right? So in the same way that you can search Google, you know, with precise search for things around me, I would love for prospective students that are in the northwest corner, when they search for a class, that classes from the northwest corner would come up first ahead of, you know, another campus. And this is something that's come up at our local pro senate questions for, you know, how do we make sure that a small school is still able to get, you know, first dibs on students that would be best served by attending courses in Northwestern, even if they don't necessarily see those options first. you know.
So you're talking about a geolocator, John?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay, thank you. Seth?
I think I just wanted to, I think this is likely going to be a good idea. I think it's just something that generally sounds like a good idea. And the sooner we can find out the cost, as Stephen said, I think the better to help make a decision. And also, I think also a good idea to send it back to the campuses. But generally, I think it should be something we should support if we want to encourage students to take classes on their home campuses.
All right, so I'm speaking mostly to the QV senators, but technically it could be to anyone. Is there a motion to take this resolution for endorsement to the 11 other campuses?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Was that Peter and Norley?
Yes.
John, your hand is up again?
Nope, my bad.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no hands, all those in favor? All those in favor?
We're at 27.
27, thank you, sir. Go ahead and lower your hands. Rhonda? Rhonda, go ahead. There we go. Those opposed? Those opposed? No opposition? Any abstentions? One abstention. The motion carries. In the meantime, Stephen, if you could please get an email going where we capture questions, cost, possible geolocator. I will begin dialogue with CT State, CSCU to see what information we can collect between now and our May meeting. Okay. Thank you very much, sir. All right, moving on to reports and consultants. So the survey that we did to find out what the purpose of a special meeting should be on the HR Shared Services report had overwhelming support. But there was also a commonality that the goal and the purpose of the meeting was to hear directly from LAM, presenting that report to CT State, not just the Senate, but in an open meeting inviting folks to attend, but also to hear directly from Chancellor Chang on how recommendations would be implemented. And they declined that invitation. They didn't counter with an alternate suggestion, except to offer to respond to a report. And responding to a report where they have seems disingenuous when they say that we're already too far into making changes. And I think that linchpin is really problematic, because if they are already so far into making changes,
Why?
I don't know who just said why, but I appreciate that.
All right. I apologize.
It's deeply problematic that no faculty or staff were consulted in this report. They talked to the unions, they talked to leadership. And this was not a free-for-all. We were not suggesting an open meeting where everybody came and expressed their frustrations about past grievances. We were suggesting, and there was significant support for collecting testimony and experiences of our constituents and sharing that with Lam and Chang. But the focus of the meeting was to make sure that we understand how changes were going to be affected. And then we would write a report making recommendations, so improving upon the things that they were going to work on. But they declined to participate. And it does make me wonder about the authentic engagement with shared governance that we heard about last week. So with that, I am returning this issue to the Senate. Do we have a special meeting? And if so, what would the purpose be? Because it's not to hear from Chang about how implementation will be affected. So I am opening the floor for comments. Yeah, this is a hard one. Sarah?
Perhaps this is naive, but would Lori Lamb be able to meet with us if Chang, like because you asked both of them?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Okay, just checking.
And initially, I thought that at a minimum Lori would present, but both of them declined. Alan?
Since the reason for not meeting with us is because changes are already being implemented, then I think we should ask for a report detailing what those changes are and when they will be implemented.
Is that a motion, sir?
It is.
Or have they been implemented? Second.
Any further discussion? Miguel?
Yeah, I agree with the motion, but I'm just wondering, it doesn't address the underlying question of should we have a meeting? I don't think there's a point of having a meeting personally, to your underlying question. I can tell you what we did was we shared the HR report at Gateway, and it has been disseminated. We sent it out by the union, at least 4Cs did. So we disseminated that HR report.
Miguel, I actually shared it from in the Senate report to the entire college.
Right.
I also shared it.
Right. So to me, the report has been disseminated. They declined the invitation. I was never in favor of Chang coming anyway, because I'm never in favor of. Okay, I'll leave it at that. So no, I don't think that. But I think that, I also don't. I think they have to be called out on stuff like this. Like, why are you declining the interview? You have a responsibility as public servants to report to your constituencies. And the fact they don't want to do that, I think is BS and needs to be addressed and called out.
Thank you. Bonnie?
I have to agree with Miguel on that, but I think a report also is, where are your status? Why isn't there transparency in regards to the things that they're already in motion and correcting? And how is our community really knowing that they're doing all of those recommended things and making things better? So that clarity should be reported out to some degree, whether it be on the website or sending it out in communication, but a report should be shared with the community.
Thank you. And Seth,
Thank you, Elle. So I wanted to say I appreciate us having the discussion, because I was one of the persons unclear about the goal of the meeting. I maybe would just take a step back and would say, CSCU shared services have proven to be such a complete disaster that one could maybe take the position we should abolish CSCU shared services entirely, because it's been such a resounding failure. So I just, to take a step back, right, as opposed to our Senate rightly asking how they're implementing the recommendations, which I support, obviously, we could possibly even take a step backwards and say, does our Senate even think CSU shared services should remain? Maybe it's proven itself to be such a complete failure to date that we should get rid of it. For the sake of argument, I just, that's the type of discussion we could have as a body if we felt that was appropriate. But that said, I'm certainly supportive of getting more information, and I'm also supportive of frankly criticizing them for failing to meet. So if we wanted to pass a resolution to simply express our dissatisfaction, if we think that's effective or not, I'm open to that as well.
well, Seth, I think it was clear that I expressed dissatisfaction in my Senate communication this month about choosing not to engage transparently with shared governance.
So, but we could pass a resolution on that, for instance, and bring it to the Board of Regents if we wanted to, just to.
Yes, we could. Peter.
I was just going to say, I think the most troubling part for me is that, if this would be terrible under any circumstance, but if this happened last April, before the merger, before, the real momentum started with shared governance and so forth, you'd more understand it. I just don't understand 10 months in with all the effort, all the time, how this can happen. I guess it really, really is disappointing. I'm just very, very surprised. I am. So I always ensue positive intent and that type of thing. But this is a tough one to wrap your hands around because I just feel like we've absolutely been dismissed as a body, and I don't know why. So just thought I'd share that.
For me, the irony is that at the March meeting, we honored a request from Chancellor Chang to come to Senate to engage with us, where he expressed a desire to engage more with shared governance. And that's the piece. Like you talked about the last 10 months. I'm talking about the last 10 weeks. So Seth, your idea of a resolution is an interesting one. I would certainly encourage someone or folks to collaborate and write a resolution that we could then pass as a Senate and present to the Board of Regents. So if somebody were to take that on, that would be a good additional step. I also want to bring attention to the fact that it is 3:44 and we have not talked about NCHEMS, Forelli, or what's the other report, Bonnie?
SVP?
No, SVP also, but the climate survey.
Oh, the climate survey, yes.
Right. So is there a move to adjourn or extend the meeting time?
We have a motion on.
We have a yeah, I was gonna say, we have a motion on the table still.
What is the motion?
So Alan had a motion that we want to have a report delivered to the Senate on the progress and work with CSCU HR. It was seconded by Roberta. We went into conversation, so we are still waiting on a vote for that motion.
It's a good thing y'all are here to keep me in check this meeting. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand.
We're at 27.
Okay, go ahead and lower your hands, folks. All those opposed? No opposition? Felicia, are you abstaining or opposing?
Opposing.
You're opposing. One in opposition. Thank you. Any abstentions? No abstentions. The motion carries. Now we need a motion to either adjourn or extend the meeting time to finish the discussion on Forelli, NCHEMS, SVP, and possibly the climate survey.
Let's make a motion to end it. It looks like we're gonna be finished.
Motion to adjourn?
Otherwise, yeah.
Thank you. Is there a second? Peter Astor
Second from
seconded.
Peter.
All those in favor of adjourning the meeting, please raise your hand.
John?
We're at 17.
17. Yes. Okay. Go ahead and lower your hand, folks. Brian and Asantwa. Thank you. All those opposed?
I see 10.
You see 10. And go ahead and lower your hands, folks. And all those abstained. Any abstentions?
I see 3.
The motion carries. The meeting is adjourned.
Bye, everybody. Have a nice weekend.
Thank you, Al.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you, folks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a good weekend.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.